Talk to a man that knows this business from the inside out, and that's Allan Moffat, who is joining our 7 commentary team as well here today. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Sandy.
Good morning, Allan.
It's great to be here at Sandown. A long time since I've seen an Australian race, but the action yesterday in the Dulux dozen was fast and furious, and the Sierras have shown that they're certainly fast, but still fragile. Only one of the Shell high-tech cars got out on the track. Second car had mechanical problems, so I'm expecting a very fast pace by Dick Johnson, but whether he's got the durability to do 500 Ks here in the Castrol 500 is going to be questionable.
Allan, we know that whether Dick's got the endurance or not, the BMWs certainly have.
Well, they've proved not only here but in Europe that they go for the pace and they also go for durability, and I think Jim will have to play a waiting game to a degree. The Sierras have such speed on the straights that they are likely to open up a good lead initially, but we mustn't discount the Commodores as well. Alan Grice and Peter Brock got their 2 Commodores up in 4th and 5th positions. That's not too shabby in a race of this magnitude.
Peter Brock, 05 on screen at the moment, and that BMW is the second JPS entry, driven by Robbie Francevic and Ludwig Finauer, and it's a while since we've seen Francevic in operation here in Australia. It's good to see him back.
Well, the last time he was here, he won a touring car championship, so he certainly has the ability to get on with it. We see a little bit of smoke coming out of that mobile car. I doubt whether that's anything to get too worried about on a Saturday night. The cars are generally not totally rebuilt, but certainly overhauled, and sometimes bits of oil get left behind. And as the car heats up, that's what we're looking at.
Mike Raymond joins us, and I think, Mike, one of the impressive things is the depth in the field for the race this year.
Certainly is, Gary. I think the man that is going to be hard to beat, though, just the same, Jim Richards. At the moment, we take race cam from Alan Grice's Bob Jane T-Mart's Commodore. Gricey, of course, teaming this afternoon with probably one of Europe's finest touring car exponents in PERCY. And whatever times Grice has been able to set over the past couple of days, Wynn has been able to equal. And that makes a formidable combination, Alan, for this afternoon.
Yes, the choice of co-driver is always super critical. There's not much use having one fellow that can do a time 2 or 3 seconds quicker than your co-driver, and it's quite daunting for the opposition when they look at the lap times at the end of a Saturday afternoon qualifying and seeing that they've got 2. It's the double-barrel shotgun approach.
Grice was 4th fastest qualifier yesterday. As Gary has already detailed, Dick Johnson has pole position. Sharing the front row today will be Jimmy Richards, and row 2 made up of George Fury, the friendly farmer from Talmalmo in New South Wales, and Alan Grice. And the 3rd row, of course, split between Peter Brock and the mobile dealer team Commodore 05. And the surprise one so far yesterday in qualifying, Kent Bajan and Graham Boquette from New Zealand. And there's Neville Crichton and Neil Lowe. They'll be driving the 2nd of the Sierras. Neville Crichton very, very keen to campaign one of the Sierras, perhaps throughout 1988. Alan Grice will be up on Lester Smurden there as they go through the corner, work their way up the back straight here at Sandown.
I think with the speed the Sierras are showing, Mike, there'll be quite a number of people rather keen to campaign them.
Yes. Well, you've been driving a Commodore throughout 1987. With the World Touring Car Championship, and I would remind viewers that Allan, of course, won the opening round of the championship with John Harvey at Monza, and of course a class win and 4th outright at Spa in Belgium during the 24-hour race. What would you prefer, perhaps, to be lining up at Bathurst in a couple of weeks' time, and Allan?
In a winning car, mate.
Succinct.
Succinct. We'll get nothing out of him, but we've got 4 hours to try today.
I think
there's car number 18, and of course I think the scene is just about set for what promises to be one of the truly great Castrol 500s this afternoon.
Oh, it'll be intriguing, there's no doubt about that. As Allan mentioned, the question is whether the Sierras can last. You know, the BMWs will. Can the Commodores get around here and keep up with the other 2, because they've certainly got what it takes. There's only one way to find out, and I guess that's to tune in and watch the race.
That's for sure.
Okay, our telecast starting at noon, immediately after the conclusion of Sports World. So, Sandy, I know that you're going to be stuck there in the studio all afternoon watching it. You're going to see a treat, I can tell you now. One of the best motor races for a long, long time.
Yes, Wilco, we're certainly looking forward to it. And as you said, our coverage gets underway at midday immediately following the show. Up to then, though, we've got a lot of sport.
Fury and Allan Grice in a Commodore. Row 3, the dealer team Commodore driven by Peter Brock, sharing the third row with Kent Bajan from New Zealand in another Nissan. Then Robbie Francevic and Ludwig Finauer in the second of the BMW M3s. Glenn Seaton and John Bauer in the second Peter Jackson Nissan, followed by Larry Perkins in the NZ Connectors Commodore. Then Murray Carter in the Netcom Nissan. That rounds out the top 10, and as I said, it's certainly going to be some race. Mike Raymond with me, and I think we're going to see a classic here today.
I think so. Of course, 21 days to the James Hardy 1000, the Castrol 500, the traditional curtain raiser to Australia's grade race. And with so many internationals coming for this round of the World Touring Car Championship. A result in the Andy Rouse Sierra, the Silverstone round of the British Touring Car Championship.
I think I had 4, 5, 6 very, very busy years. And although I didn't want it, it probably has done me a lot of good to be on the sideline for a little while, looking around at different people, different cars, different drives. It's made me appreciate touring car racing.
3. Our roving touring car ambassador has done Australia proud this year on the overseas circuit, taking the opening round of the World Championship at Monza, Italy, followed by a class win and 4th outright in the Spa 24-hour Classic in Belgium. Today he'll be donning a headset rather than a helmet to be part of 7 sports team calling the shots for our international audience.
Sure, it would be great to be racing here today, Mike. It's the home of some of my fondest memories, but I'm glad to be with my old mates at 7 and part of the telecast. I enjoy it, and it will certainly give me an opportunity to see what I'm up against in 3 weeks' time for the James Hardy. And when we're able to announce what we're going to be at Bathurst with, I'll certainly know what I've got to fight.
While Allan may still be a chance for the Bathurst pole in 3 weeks, today's Castrol combatants had their own shootout yesterday in the Dulux dozen. And we'll gloss over that fact after this break.
It's shaping up to be some race.
It certainly is. I think the interesting thing is going to be whether or not the Sierras can last the distance and whether or not the M3s are going to be able to produce the same sort of form that they've produced in Europe, with the reliability that they've had and the consistency, and of course the fact that they have to make less fuel stops and they spend less time in the pits.
Well, the others have the reliability. The Commodores certainly, although this not quite as suited by this track since they changed it and put all those little bends in over at the back, but it does suit the BMW.
It does indeed. The little bends are the bit that really do go down well with them. The Sierras, of course, have the big advantage of the straights. They have an enormous amount of power now. They've got somewhere in the region of 500 brake horsepower, so they really do fly down the straights. The Commodores, of course, have the advantage of being good all round. They're very average all the way around the circuit, and that should help them through towards the end of the race, I think.
And of course we haven't mentioned the Peter Jackson Nissans in there for good measure. So 4 different makes of car, in fact, in the top 4 on the grid. That's going to make it interesting to see how it pans out. Long race, 129 laps, 500 kilometres around Sandown. They are going to have a very tough time sorting themselves out. 42 cars to start in the big race, and as I said, Dick Johnson on pole position, and he's going to have to really fight to try and protect that position. So let's have a look at the way they qualified out here yesterday at Sandown. They really set the crowd alight with a Bathurst-style qualifying.
Yesterday's group qualifying sessions produced some frenzied on-track activity as the teams attempted to beat the predicted showers in their quest for a piece of dry road. There were several off-track excursions, but it was obvious Andrew Madecki had them all covered in the Oxo Supercube Ford Sierra. He was 0.3 of a second quicker than Allan Grice, but it was all to no avail, as his co-driver Don Smith cubed the Oxo Ford in this wild ride to the sand trap.
Well, I was watching the times as we were going around. I was doing 51s, and I thought, well, I've got to go a bit quicker than that. So I knew I was losing time up here, not braking late enough and that, and I just tried a bit later and missed third gear as I was changing down and locked up the back. I just sort of skated a bit, which I thought I had it under control all right, and then I just clipped the ripple strip and it bucked the car up, and then I tried to get it back down, but I just started this slow roll business, and I was starting to count them in the finish.
Yeah, that's the way it goes, eh, Mark? You know, I think we served notice. You know, we were pretty confident running away with this race, but these things happen, and that's motor racing, so there's not much you can do about it.
The Dulux dozen punt for pole was a reenactment of Hardy's heroes. 12 against the clock and a $5,000 bonus. Warren Cullen was the first away in the Super Salvage Commodore. Unfortunately, the wet track put paid quickly to his qualifying aspirations. Seven's Neil Crofton was next out aboard the number 6 Mobile Commodore. Making the dozen was a creditable performance in itself, and he was almost 3 seconds quicker than Cullen. Veteran Murray Carter was third on the qualifying queue in the Netcon Nissan. The 56-year-old is still ultra-competitive, and he'll start from position 10 this afternoon. JPS BMW's Ludwig Finau took advantage of a drying track to actually better his morning qualifying run. 1 minute 51.14 seconds. The improvement, 3/100ths of a second. Then it was time for the heavy artillery to fire. Car number 15, Glenn Seaton at the wheel, the man who won the Castrol 500 last year with the Talmalmo farmer Georgie Fury. The 22-year-old underway, and the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline heads into the left-hander.
Here's a driver that really can give lessons to even the top pros here in Australia. He has advanced just so much in the last couple of seasons, Glenn Seaton, and is a driver to be feared here in the Castrol 500.
We take race cam from Glenn Seaton's Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline to show you the young man at work as he attempts to set pole position for the 500k Enduro. Really on the limit, coming out nice line. Runner-up, of course, to Jim Richards in the Australian Touring Car Championship for 1987. Picking up a wheel through there.
One wheel.
Using all of the circuit. Oh, and gets it up on 2 that time. Once again, Seaton gets it up a little sideways coming out of there, but working the throttle. And here he comes down to take the checkered flag. Glenn Seaton, car number 15. And a strong time for the 22-year-old as he goes past the start-finishing line.
151.18 the time for Glenn Seaton.
The Hardy's Heroes type qualifying for the Castrol 500 was introduced last year. George Fury appeared to have pole position locked up. But in the dying moments of practice, Peter Perfect from Melbourne came back to snatch pole position. And here is Brocky underway now in the Mobile Commodore 05. Really working it through the left-hander. He's well and truly on his way. He'll work the motor as they come up the back chute now. The circuit certainly favours the V8 Commodore. Back down through the Village Grand Prix maze of the infield. And Brocky working hard in the 05. Really back at his best, drifting it through there. Picked up a second in the recent Pepsi 250 at Oran Park and looking sharp here this afternoon. Sweeping past the pit area now, Peter Brock, 05, the Mobile Commodore, stretching all the horsepower out as he comes down the straight with a checkered flag awaits him. Running out wide, there's the flag. Brocky looking for pole position for the Castrol 500. He's done it, a 149. 149, 3-1. Peter Brock, fast man so far. Queensland's hope of a win in the Castrol 500 rests with this driver, Dickie Johnson. In the Shoal, Cosworth Sierra. It sounds beautiful as he takes it across the line down to the left-hander. The Sierra with the new homologation package, expect them to run like the wind here at Sandown this weekend. We take race cam now with Dick Johnson through the left-hander as he works his way up the back straight. Just look at the strain on his face.
Yeah, I think he's got some indication of Brock's time, and Johnson really is going for it.
Just listen to the sound of the Sierra up the back chute. Sweeping out of that turn now. They claim they've got 450 horsepower out of the Sierras. Andrew Madecki, of course, set fast time earlier today with a 149.45 until Don Smith upended the car in the kitty litter at the end of the front straight. For Ford Sierra's going to gain pole. All rests with this man, Tricky Dicky from Queensland, the top banana.
tell us that across the back of the circuit, Johnson was just a tick faster than Brock was at the same stage of his lap.
He was really gassing up coming out of that last corner. Johnson trying to do it as neatly as possible as he sweeps now past the pits and lets all that 450 loose via the back wheels.
It's going to be very close. The time is going to be very close to Brock.
Here he comes, grandstand warming. Dickie Johnson takes it across the line. He's done it! Johnson has beaten Brock's time so far. And the time for Dickie Johnson, a 1:47.59. The Queenslander is back as well. The Australian Touring Car Champion for 1987, as well as 1985, is Jimmy Richards, the JPS Team BMW. Can Jim come from behind and snare pole position this afternoon in the Dulux dozen? He's going to give it a good rub. Into the left-hander. Study of concentration.
It's up to the BMW M3 now, and Jim Richards.
With just 2/3 the horsepower of what Dickie Johnson had in the M3 here, Jim Richards has got to rely on the handling of the BMW to get him round.
Yes, he won't have that brute horsepower coming on and lighting up the back tyres. He's doing a great job, though. The M3s were certainly designed for this part of the Sandown course, the free-flowing turns. Just look how cool Gentleman Jim is behind the wheel, working it. And Gentleman Jim, who is enjoying a banner year in the endurance races so far, and of course the recently completed Australian Touring Car title. Here he comes, looking for pole for the Castrol 500, our national champ, Jimmy Richards. It's 1:48.44. That makes Jim second fast time to Dickie Johnson.
This afternoon's Castrol 500 Classic here at Sandown sees the debut of Ford's new homologation package here in Australia. Dick Johnson has put the car on pole position, but Dick, tell me, can the car reproduce the same form in the race?
I sincerely hope so. We've had a few problems leading up to the qualifying, but I think we've straightened those out now, and we'll just sort of try and settle into some sort of pattern for the race and run probably a sensible speed. We don't actually want to go out and bolt away into the distance and try and win it by 10 laps. We just want to win the race by the smallest possible margin.
This isn't really a Sierra circuit, as you mentioned earlier on. What happens when you get to Bathurst?
Well, hopefully, if everything hangs together, I think you'll find that the Sierras will do extremely well at Bathurst, and certainly Sandown isn't the place for them, but the wide open straights, etc., that Bathurst has, and the very high-speed corners on the top of the mountain will suit the car down to the ground.
Let's take a look how they line up today. Pole position, Dickie Johnson and Greg Hansford in the Shell Sierra. From 2, car number 1, Jim Richards and Tony Longhurst for JPS. Out of position number 3, car 30, Peter Jackson. George Fury and Terry Shield. From 4, 2, car Allan Gryson, Win PERCY of the UK. From 5 is car number 5, Peter Brock, the Mobile Dealer Team. Co-driver David Parsons. From 6:25, Team Nissan New Zealand, Ken Baget and Graham Balquette. From 7, car number 3, Robbie Francevic of New Zealand and Ludwig Finau in the JPS BMW. From position number 8, car number 15, the Peter Jackson Nissan Racing Skyline, Glenn Seaton and John Bow. From position number 9, car number 11, the NZ Team Perkins, Larry Perkins and Denny Holmes split the driving chores. And rounding out the top 10 today, car number 14, Network Com Racing, Murray Carter, the veteran, and Dennis Hawley. We'll take a break and then back for the start of the Castrol 500. This race, they're back stronger than ever. George Fury drives this circuit well, and so Glenn Seaton.
About 15 minutes to race time for the Castrol 500 for 1987. Big crowd here, and as we said, a lot of them have come to see Peter Brock. Can he turn in some Brock magic after what's been a pretty much indifferent year?
January 87 was the General's last stand for Peter Brock. He rocked the Wellington docks to win the Nissan Mobile 500 for the second time in 2 years. Even before the champagne corks quit popping, the marriage between Peter Perfect and Holden's Motor Company was headed for the rocks. The energy all gone. Brock, the car builder, had unveiled this fantastic plastic Touareg-type tourer called the Director. HMC did not approve, so the only course was divorce. Moffat and Harvey left, Mobile stayed, and Polarizer Pete joined the Touring Car Championship trail as a privateer. Despite 9 rounds of midfield racing, Brocky never once lost his enthusiasm. The though the off-track excursions of his number 2 Teamsters must have sorely tested his patience. But at Oran Park 3 weeks ago, the boss was back. He charged to the front of the Pepsi 250 Enduro with ridiculous ease and was running away from the BMWs until a pit stop mishap cost him the race. Brocky has won the Sandown Enduro a staggering 9 times. He's usually in a class of his own here, and victory today will have a dramatic unsettling effect on rival teams with Bathurst only 3 weeks away.
It's always nice to get the boys tuned up with a good run here at Sandown, and I've won this race a number of times. I'd like to make it a few more. It's changed in its relevance, I guess, to Bathurst, because it's now a very tight twisting track, a bit like Oran Park actually here at Sandown, and so therefore the only things you're really testing are your pit stops, and your drivers are going to be tuned up to drive correctly and things like that. The sheer speed isn't there.
Taking over the role of lead driver in Brock's second Mobile Commodore today is 7's own Neil Crompton. Our resident rev head is usually restricted to the confines of the commentary box or pit lane, but a mid-season stint in a borrowed sports sedan showed conclusively he has what it takes in all types of makes.
It's a great opportunity that's been given to me by the Brock organisation and the Mobile team, and you know, for a guy whose career I've followed for all these years to actually participate in his race team is an opportunity that very few young blokes ever get.
Now that you're spending so much time actually behind the wheel, how do you justify the enormous salary that Channel 7 pay you?
It's very difficult, and I think the only contribution I can make this week is ask everybody to settle back and enjoy our global wrap.
Dick, though, has the second car to move into. He has now moved to car 18, but one man that hasn't had an option today is Andrew Madecki from Port Macquarie. You're a spectator, Andy.
Yeah, that's the way it goes, I guess. I was really looking forward to being able to put the Oxo Sierra on pole here, and I really think we could have done it. So we were just doing our times. We were so much faster and doing it so easily earlier on Friday and Saturday. It was a shame we lost the car, but that's racing, I guess.
Well, there we have it. We came to Sandown with four Ford Sierras in the program. There are now 2 for the great race.
Yes, I don't know about the great race, but it's certainly going to put a lot of pressure on the drivers of car number 18. I would say Dick Johnson will do the opening stint, but it was very strange to see Dick line up at the start of the grid. He won't be starting off pole if he elects to run car number 18. Let's have a look, in fact, how the top 10 will line up in the Classic Aussie race. Pole position scheduled for Dick Johnson and Greg Hansford in car number 17, the Shell Sierra. Out of 2 and sharing the front row now with nobody, just Jimmy Richards in the JPS BMW. From 3 is car number 30, Georgie Fury and Terry Shield. Peter Jackson, Nissan Skyline. From position number 4, car number 2, Allan Grice and Britain Win Percy in the Bob Jane T-Marts Commodore. Out of 5 is 05, the Mobile Commodore, Peter Brock and David Parsons to share with Peter Perfect today. Flag goes up as we prepare. 7 Sport brings you the start of the Castrol 500. Allan Grice just takes off and lights up the pavement. Gricey's gone, coming up smartly on the inside as Farmer George Fury, Glenn Seaton in for a run. Larry Perkins out of 9 and Peter Brock forcing a run down the inside. A touch then almost between the 2 Nissans as they fight for racing room. It'll be Allan Grice who goes through to take the lead. They sweep through the first left-hander and head down now to the chicane with Allan Grice leading Nissans 1 and Nissans 2. Back behind them, Peter Brock coming up on the inside of Larry Perkins. They sweep through Castrol corner and now start to work the back straight for the first time. Graham Balquette, little shaky there, getting out of the turn sideways in the Nissan. But we have a tremendous dice going up the back straightaway. Grice just stretching away in the lead. The 2 Nissans back. And one coming through the pack already is Dick Johnson in car number 18.
By gee, isn't that Sierra moving up the back straight? He just planted his foot once they got out of Castrol turn, and on that long uphill back straight, the Sierra absolutely took off. Grice in front, followed by the 2 Nissans, George Fury and Glenn Seaton. Brock fighting for room there. He and Balquette really had a bit of a set to it back at Castrol corner. And Johnson now in the number 18 Sierra right on their hammer. It really is a gigantic tussle up front, and of course 42 starters all together in the race, the field stringing out behind them.
They come down through the infield section. Brocky 05 trailing Larry Perkins there. Dickie Johnson sits behind in the Shell Cosworth Sierra. Balquette is the next one up. Dick Johnson up to 6. As Peter McLeod goes through on the inside, being trailed by Murray Carter. They're through nicely. Coming down for the run through the right-hander to the pits for the first time.
Well, obviously, Larry Perkins wasn't too concerned about his qualifying position. He's right up there before you can say boo with 1 lap completed. I think he spent a lot of time on what his car was going to do in the race, and he wasn't too concerned about the 1 lap dash in the Dulux dozen. But the Commodores are doing extremely well early in the race.
That's right, Allan. There's Johnson, car number 18, coming up on the inside of Brocky. And keeping the pressure well and truly on, and the big crowd here in the grandstand at Sandown rising as Dickie Johnson makes progress through the pack.
The other Commodores won't want Gracie getting too far ahead, but the Nissans with their quick speeds through the short parts of the circuit will hold up the but look at the Sierra go in a straight line.
Unbelievable.
Talk about horses for courses. That's horsepower working for you.
Okay, Dick Johnson gets by Peter Brock and now has Larry Perkins on his side. Here come Brock again, trying on the outside. No room there. Tucks in again behind Johnson.
The Commodore's actually faster through the tight corners than the Sierra. I think the Queensland team has spent a great deal of work on their engines, and I'm not so sure that their car is as fast as it potentially could be. But the Commodores are certainly quick through the short bits, and of course can open up their V8 power on the straights as well.
Dick Johnson reminding you at the wheel of car number 18, having qualified on pole position in car 17, but the car not able to start in the race.
Well, he's sitting right in behind Larry Perkins at this stage. He's been able to dispose with Peter Brock. This will give you some indication how competitive you can expect the Ford Cosworth to be in the James Hardy 1000, which you'll be seeing on the 7 network exclusively in 21 days' time. Johnson right up now behind Larry Perkins.
Concentration on his face there, Mike, as he's that's a death-defying position.
If you
Commodore looked like a block of flats in front of him.
Look at this for absolute grunt. Down the outside, straight past Larry Perkins, and now begins to haul in the 2 Nissans and race leader Allan Grice. Grice already up here on the inside with a challenger.
Well, if that's what a Sierra can do on Conrad, Gary, I think it's a good night general.
Well, he not only passed Larry Perkins there, he pulled 30 yards on him in the space of 3 seconds.
And that's not his personal car, that's their second car.
Something's wrong with Grice.
Well,
Grice has lost
power. He certainly has lost power, and it's slowing going up the back straightaway. Just prior to that, we had the 2 Nissans just absolutely go through on the inside of Grice. And what we have coming up is a very interesting scrap. The 2 Peter Jackson Nissan Skylines, and on the next shot, you'll see the man closing on them is Dick Johnson. Johnson goes through. There's Brock sitting in behind them. Down to the right-hander. And look for Johnson as he closes in on the race leaders, the 2 Peter Jackson Nissan Skylines. How quick was Johnson up the back straight? We've already seen him take care of Perkins down the start-finishing straight here at Sandown, and Peter Brock and Larry Perkins sit just in behind him in case anything goes astray. Got a good head of steam up. The Shell Cosworth Sierra, designated today to be driven, of course, by Neil Lowe and Neville Crichton. But the team boss, after problems this morning with the 17 car, is elected to run the first stint himself. And up to the right-hander, Glenn Seaton leads this race. George Fury in second. Dickie Johnson is third. Larry Perkins is fourth. Peter Brock is fifth. Now can Dick Johnson close up the gap as they work their way down the start-finishing straight. Running third at the moment. See if he can pull out. 1 car coming out of the pits. Johnson moves across. Seaton still the race leader, and down the outside of Fury goes Johnson. Can he make it around the outside as they go into the corner? No, he can't.
Wouldn't be a very wise place to try it, Michael.
Not the best, as we saw Don Smith yesterday. Very unforgiving part of the circuit. But Johnson is definitely the man on the move at the moment. In the pits, and as you can see, Allan Grice is in. Big problems there for the Les Small team. Up the back straight away, and Johnson splits them as he works his way past Fury in car number 18.
Back straight is absolute deadly, isn't it, as far as car 18 is concerned. Once they plant the foot going up the hill there, it just takes off.
And we must bear in mind it is a significant hill carry up the back straight. Doesn't look it on the camera angle, but that's a decent climb up the back straight and an indication of just how well they will climb the mountain in 3 weeks' time.
Dick Johnson now running second on the track. Keep in mind, Johnson started off position 14. He's passed all those cars in only 3 laps. We come through the turn. There's Grice sitting in the car. Les Small.
Looks like an electrical worry.
Certainly does. Johnson hasn't shaken Glenn Seaton, or George Fury, I should say. Seaton's still out in front. Johnson closing, and in the background there, Jimmy Richards starting to pick up the pace just a little in the JPS BMW M3.
The M3 being the lightest car in the field, Mike, his tires would have been the least likely to warm up in a hurry. The heavier cars, and both the Sierra and the Nissans are heavier than the BMW. It'll take a couple more laps before Jim might be as happy as he wants to be.
Start finishing straight across the line. Johnson just gains 100 metres as he comes down on the outside of Glenn Seaton. Seaton will be able to get into the turn first. Johnson is a little closer this time. We'll look for his move on the back straight. Down now to the right and left-hander. And doing it very easily indeed is Dickie Johnson up to Castrol corner. Now we've been able to see Nissans dominate touring car racing this year, and of course the BMW M3s. It's been a pretty crook year for Commodores, but as they work the back straight, here's Johnson, gets into the draft, now pulls to the outside of Glenn Seaton. Grandstand absolutely erupts as Johnson goes the outside route. There's race cam from Glenn Seaton, and you'll find that Seaton was able to hold his line going into the left-hander. Johnson is all over him. Wait for the passing manoeuvre next time they come down past the grandstand.
Tell you what, it was a pretty good effort of Seaton's to hold Johnson out there.
Well, Johnson was on the wrong line there for that turn. He made a big, desperate move up the outside, but unfortunately the next corner was the left one.
See that the Sierra is marginally slower through those corners. The Nissan has opened up a few car lengths. He's definitely, more than a couple. But it's the brute horsepower that is keeping Dick Johnson in this race. He has the advantage of slipstreaming initially and then pulling out and having the power just to glide by.
Well, he's certainly dropped off a bit behind race leader Glenn Seaton. In fact, Fury was a little closer coming out of that last corner. And he catches the race leader probably 50 metres before the end of the straight here. And unless you're set up there on the inside, there's no use even thinking about rounding them on the outside. Here they come down the straight again.
Seaton opened up a bit of a gap there through the bends. Can he maintain it now they're on the straight? Johnson's not going to catch him down the main straight. The back straight uphill seems to be the go for the Sierra. Couldn't quite get past Seaton last time round. Maybe he can manage it this time. He's got to latch onto Seaton's tail before he gets there. He's got 2 more corners to go before they straighten up and head up the back once more.
He wants to be right on his tail through this left-hander to get the maximum run on that straight. I don't think he's close enough to do it this time. George Fury is taking good advantage of slipstreaming Dick, and he's staying in the race.
Here comes Johnson again, up on the outside. Draws level, you'll watch him go past here, but he's caught again on the outside, and there's a left corner coming up. Seaton, it's his piece of road, and he will dive in here and holds pride of place as we take race cam out of Glenn Seaton's Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. Johnson runs in second. Third spot still being held down by George Fury, the second of the BJ Nissans. We'll go back to the other dice shortly, but as Dick Johnson makes his bid to lead this race after starting so well back.
The Sierra is using first gear out of those corners, Mike, and he's not probably as happy with the idea of dropping 400-odd horsepower through first gear. And I think that's where the Nissan is just marginally getting the bite out of those corners with a better gearing ratio.
It was noticeable yesterday in the Dulux Auto Colour qualifying that when he lit up the back tyres there, just everything broke loose. I take your point.
He's got 400-odd kilometers in front of him, and he'd be wise to sit there for a while at the moment.
Expert comments in our telecast today from Allan Moffat, who's sitting up here with a gleam in his eye as he sees these cars zip underneath us, but still won't part with the secret of what he's going to be driving at Bathurst.
Let's have a look as they come down the front straight this time. Once again, Glenn Seaton 15. Dickie Johnson sits in behind him. George Fury runs third in car number 30. Fourth is Peter Brock, and fifth, right behind Brock and harrying him, is Jimmy Richards in the JPS BMW. Sixth is the Bowcat Bajent. Seventh, of course, Larry Perkins running in 8th spot across the line as they come down the front straight at the moment. Will in fact be Murray Carter, and 9th is Neil Crompton from position number 11.
It's a credit to Freddie Gibson's team to have 2 cars so early in the race up there. It's very hard to get 1 car into the race, as Dick has shown us, let alone 2, and to be running 1 and 3. George is not upset with that position at the moment, I'm sure.
What a scrap at the top end of the circuit. They come through here again. Johnson was much closer that time on Glenn Seaton, but Seaton just whips his way through the infield section of the racetrack here at Sandown. Fury is sitting right in behind them. And then the scrap back to, of course, Peter Brock and Jimmy Richards. Brock still holding that spot on the road. Seaton lapping already one of the Geminis. And he goes away.
He's certainly not letting Dick bother him. He's driving a very cool position, and that's hard when you've got a experience of Dick Johnson behind you, and obviously with a car that he knows has got more horsepower than his own. He's making every foot a winner.
That was terrific. Johnson now rounds slower car. Meantime, the horses bolted again as they come onto the grandstand straight.
Yes. It appears he's not going to be able to nail him, Mike, unless he's right on his bumper bar and has the chance to sleep him all the way up the straight.
Across the line again. Seaton leads from Dick Johnson. George Fury is 3rd. 4th place being held by Jimmy Richards and Brock. They're inseparable at this stage.
Johnson making a very concerted effort to latch onto the tail of Seaton here again. The back straight coming up in just a moment. Now, let's see, can he take off and draw him in? He's closer than he has been the last couple of laps. Johnson puts the foot down. Here he comes. Dick Johnson moves up, moves abreast, and moves past Glenn Seaton, and Dick Johnson takes the lead.
So Seaton closes it up under brakes. Can he do it? Oh, he's got it hooked up. He's gone straight over the curb. That wasn't the best, cleanest line out of the corner, and Johnson just got there as well. So Johnson leads it. He'll be harried, though, through the infield section. Here's Seaton letting him know. He's got a race on his hands. He takes the lead back. Grandstand absolutely erupts here as they come out of that turn and work through the infield.
Can I stand it to Seaton? He stands up for himself, doesn't he?
No, he's definitely not going to lay down on this one. Both cars are running on Dunlop tires. They'll have equal adhesion in terms of their handling. Both be warm enough to be exactly what the drivers want them to do. In fact, they'll probably be starting to nurse them a little bit. In fact, Glenn won't want to be doing too much of that, or he'll find his rear traction going down the drain very quickly.
I think we might get a challenge for the lead next time down the straight, though. Seaton just checking out the mirrors. So he comes up to the right-hander. Now to the left, coming up towards the pit area. Johnson is much closer, and he'll do this in front of the grandstand crowd. Just listen for the noise. They work their way onto the start-finishing straight. Seaton elects to hug the inside. Here comes Queensland's number 1. Down the outside, the crowd goes wild with excitement, and Johnson takes back the lead from Glenn Seaton. But Seaton coming right up under brakes and thinking about a little inside pressure putt there. But Johnson has some traffic to contend with. Gets around the outside of the Gary Wilmington and Bob Holden Toyota quite nicely. Comes up again to Castrol corner.
It's been a long time since there's been a Ford in the lead at Sandown, Mike.
I think you drove it, didn't you?
Probably, and we won't count how many years ago, please.
Look at Johnson, takes off now, and he's going to open up quite a gap on Seaton as they head up the back straight once more. Seaton will close up under brakes when they get to the top of the hill. Whether or not he can get close enough to affect another pass in the S's remains to be seen. Dick Johnson in the lead. Well, that's a hell of a performance, isn't it? Coming from 4 to his. Seaton again having another go. Johnson with his hands full.
Beautiful shots from another one of our race cam units. 7 Sports exclusive for motor racing, particularly touring cars. This one mounted on the floor, and you can see the expressions of Dick. He's checking out the mirrors.
He's definitely talking to himself. He's really concentrating, and that's really interesting to see that angle. They're not easy to drive. The tires are not so wide that they make it easy for the drivers, and that's why you see a lot of the switching back and forth. The driver feels the rear of the car moving, and he's correcting very quickly.
coming up past the pit area yet again. And we'll see if Johnson can open that gap. There's the difference in the acceleration. There's George Fury still running in third. A couple of slower cars, not causing any interference whatsoever. Jimmy Richards sits back and forth. So Dick Johnson leads the Castrol 500. Car sounds beautiful. Seems to be running very, very well indeed. Let's recap the placing so far on the Castrol scoreboard. Dickie Johnson leads the race. Glenn Seaton is second. George Fury is third. Richards is fourth. Brock is fifth. Sixth is Ken Bajan. Seventh, Larry Perkins. Eighth is Murray Carter. Ninth is our own kid, Neil Crompton. And rounding out the 10, Warren Cullen. We'll be back in a moment.
Get your race cam back out there, obviously, and get Win in the car and give him a few more miles before he comes back out for Bathurst.
Last year, Allan Grice was the unlucky performer in the Sandown race. A jam wheel nut put him out of the winner's circle, perhaps. This year, the jinx struck a little bit early. Mike.
Thank you, Peter. We'll no win for Percy here today at Sandown in the Castrol 500. Bad luck for Gricey. And he'll be back, as will not only today's field, but all the internationals for the James Hardy 1000 in 3 weeks' time. Our opening Australian round of the World Touring Car Championship, to be followed a week later by the second Aussie round of the world title at Calder Park, Melbourne. So Richards continues nicely. I don't really think Allan he'd be too fussed about the two Nissans at this stage, and Dick Johnson, because there'd be a big question mark over whether Johnson's car could take 500 Ks around here with the way they've been destroying motors.
I'm sure that's the opinion along the pit row, Mike, but one of the things that he would be watching would be the performance of the two Nissans. He wouldn't want them getting too far away, but Jim doesn't blow engines up. They set it to the pace. He runs it as hard as it can. He nurses his car where he has to. He drives it hard where it'll take it. And you can be sure of one thing, he will be a force in this race throughout the day.
Another interesting thing is that BMW are planning one pit stop for the race. Some of the other teams indicated this morning too, so
well, that could win it for them.
That could win it for them.
Yes.
And if he sits very neatly in what he's doing at the moment,
some of them are going to make three.
In the case of Allan Grice, one so far, and might be the permanent one.
I asked Larry Perkins what their plan was, and he said 3 pit stops. So I said, "You've got to be joking." He said, "No." He said, "All we're getting," he said, "is 45 laps to a tank of gas."
I don't think it'll be their worry about the petrol as much as it will be the tires, Gary. Yes, this circuit is extremely hard on a Commodore, and they're working their rear tires all the time. They have to, and the only relief it gets is up the straight.
There's Peter Brock, 05, sitting in at the moment, running 5th on the road.
See a very good example of the rear suspension modification that's been adopted by the mobile team. The rear tires have a slight tilt on it, about 3 degrees for the people that are technically minded, and that's helping Peter get through these slower corners. You notice it's not throwing the car around at the rear. It's giving him a lot more bite at the rear of the car, and he's able then to get the power on quickly and accelerate up the back straight, where the V8 can really perform at its maximum. So his position is good in this early stage of the race.
6th spot being held down just behind Peter Brock is Graham Bowkett and Ken Bajent in the Nissan Skyline. But Brock with the strongest running Commodore at this stage. Also noticing one of the Mercedes 190s. Phil Ward car parked there on the infield, so it has certainly retired very early in the race. Peter Perfect, of course, has won this race 9 times. 8 times winner of the James Hardy 1000. Of course, winner of the 74, 78, 1980 Castrol, or the Australian Touring Car Championship. 4th in the 86 Castrol 500 earlier this year, teaming with our co-commentator today, Allan Moffat, to win the Nissan Mobile 500 on the streets of Wellington for the 2nd successive year. Well, there's the BMW. Hood is up, not a good sign. Phil Ward stepping out of the car. So they have problems.
The Wellington race was very exciting, Mike, and I understand you'll be helping New Zealand Broadcasting again this year present their premier event.
Yes, as around 7 viewers, of course, will be able to follow the South Pacific rounds of the World Touring Car Championship. Not only the James Hardy 1000 at Calder a week later, 2 weeks after that, of course, our 17 will be at Wellington to bring you all the highlights of that event. Here's Balquet and Kent Bagent, of course, sharing the number 25 Nissan Skyline. Kent Bagent starting the race this afternoon.
These two,
or Balquet, I should say.
These two fellows were in the second car last year. Helped us, John Harvey and myself and Peter, win the King's Cup at the Spa 24-hour. They're a couple of good old boys from New Zealand. They work hard and have got their little Nissan up here in a very respectable position.
They've got stronger at each race, and they found the reliability factor with the Nissan, as have, of course, the Peter Jackson team, organised by Freddie Gibson, Barry Seaton. So the Nissan's looking very, very comfortable. 3 or 4 of them starting in the top 10 here today, and all of them still running. Glenn Seaton second, George Fury is third, and Graham Balquet is sixth.
Just checking through the New Zealand contingent here, there must be a dozen of them, and you can even extend that if you count back and include Jim Richards, although of course resident in Australia now for so many years. But along with Robbie Francevic, Neville Crichton, Balquet, the rest of them, there's a big bunch of them here, and they're pretty determined to win. They've beaten us at just about everything else lately.
I said to them, if there's any more of you fellas coming over here trying to take our jobs away from us, we're going to get Bob Hawke onto you.
You saw almost an anxious moment there for Graham Balquet as he came up on one of the Geminis and a Commodore. Almost a touch there as they couldn't make up their minds where to move to give him some free track. That held him up marginally. He was closing a little on Peter Brock up until that point.
These cars.
Let's check the positions on the Castrol scoreboard. Queensland's own Tricky Dicky leads at Glenn Seaton in second. Georgie Fury is third. Richards fourth. Peter Brock is fifth. Running sixth on the track, Kent Bagent, Graham Balquet. Seventh is Larry Perkins. Eighth is veteran Murray Carter. Ninth is our very own Neil Crompton. And 10th is Warren Cullen. We'll be back in just a moment. A week's time, vacating the, or filling in for the spot. It'll be vacated for that race by our own Neil Crompton. He'll be far busier with a red jacket and a microphone at Bathurst.
Oh, well, we've got to keep him back on the job, man. We've got to keep him off the streets, too, you know. We don't want him out practicing on the Orange Highway on Saturday night.
You're not wrong. Richard Hay joins us in our commentary spot high above the grandstand here at Sandown this afternoon. Things looking good. You've been watching Sierra's winning all season in Europe.
Yes, indeed, but one of the problems that they have had is tyres. I notice now that Dick Johnson seems to have eased off the pace just a little bit, and I wonder whether or not that's perhaps because he's looking at the tyre situation and trying to make it through on just the 2 stops. These cars have an enormous amount of horsepower, some 460 horsepower Johnson reckoned that he'd be running with in the race. And if that's the case, he's going to have terrible trouble accelerating out of the tight turns onto the long straights here and keeping the tyres in one piece.
I must pay a special tribute to our race cam team, keeping in mind they had Dick's number 17 car set up with race cam this morning, and we had the ability to be able to talk during the race to Dick. Then at the very last moment, of course, they couldn't have the 17 car out in the racetrack, so Dick changed to 18, and all of our race cam boys were set a very, very tough task. 15 minutes to go and mount a camera in the 18 car. They've done that. We don't have talkies, but we certainly have pictures coming from the flight deck of the Shell Sierra. Well done, race cam boys.
Well, Dick is he's definitely working on the job, and he's paying a lot of attention to his gauges. He can almost feel his back teeth grinding there as he grips the steering wheel and coaxes his little car around. He's certainly talking his way through some of the cars, and I would say having a little mental swear there at someone or other that's upset his...
It'd be hard work though, wouldn't it, Alan, driving a car with that much power?
I think it would. It would be quite excruciating deciding how to squeeze that power on, and you'd certainly want to know that the front wheels were pointed in a straight line before you do anything.
those two Nissans seem to be getting closer and closer and closer to him. It's only down the straights, of course, that he has an advantage. You probably noticed earlier on that they were getting much closer to him through the twists and turns.
I think you nominated quite rightly, Richard, problem they had with the Sierra, with the Dick's feeling the pinch as far as tyres are concerned. Our information is that Dick will be headed for the pits under 5 laps for a quick tyre change.
Well, he would have had to have worked the car extremely hard to get from his grid position up into the lead. You don't do that on automatic pilot, and you're not able to cushion the car. So he's worked the car hard to get into the lead, and I suspect the reason the gap is so slender at the moment is that he is nursing them as much as possible now and still maintaining the lead.
Working to a race plan, Alan, if you were driving that same car and it was competitive, how many pit stops would you be planning on the Sierra for the Castrol 500?
I think you'd have to look at a minimum of 2.
Yeah.
There'd be no way around that, and also there'd be the advantage of once having done that, you wouldn't have to carry a full load of each segment, and that could help your tire wear at the back. But as Richard has said, over 450 horsepower going through tires that are not much more than about 8-9 inches wide. The driver has well and truly got to ramrod that car by the seat of his pants.
Yeah, in Europe, particularly in the shorter races, such as the British Championship races, which run over about 20 laps, somewhere around about 50 miles, Andy Rouse has found terrible trouble in getting a set of tyres that will do the distance. They're either so wooden that they're, they've got nothing at all, and there's rain there on the windscreen, incidentally, of Seaton's car.
That compounds the problem then for Dick Johnson, and it's only light rain. I don't think we're expecting a thunderstorm, but then again, it is Castrol weekend at Sandown. We have 4 seasons here in 3 days.
Michael, you're not allowed to talk against our city if you want to get out of it in one piece.
That's true, but it is the truth.
You're not safe until you get back into New South Wales, and we've got a lot of friends at Telemarine can fix guys like you in a hurry.
Coming up to Castrol Corner, the left-hander, rain up the top end of the circuit. The road will be very, very greasy from here, and I tell you what, Johnson tries to get 450 horsepower down on the road.
The rain will hurt him more than the Nissans. They've got the less power, and they can squeeze it on with a greater degree of confidence, making life just a little bit easier for the drivers, and not so much easier, but they're able to capitalize more. That's some good English there.
Who's it going to do? That's good for them.
Save me, Richard.
Here we come up to the right-hander, and you can see that Glenn Seaton is closing dramatically on Dick Johnson. Johnson comes into the corner, trying not to light up those back tyres and get it all squirrely and sideways coming out of there. George Fury sits in behind Seaton. And Seaton, I think you will find, unless Dick comes to the pits this time around, will have a big go down the outside at the as they work their way onto the straight. Maybe Dick's horsepower will carry him through there, but through this part of the circuit, as Allan has already observed on a number of occasions, the Nissan is certainly a little bit quicker.
While Johnson's holding up these Sierras, of course, the one man who this is going to do some real good for is Jim Richards in the little BMW, because that car really excels in these sort of conditions when it's a little bit slippery and handling's at a premium.
Okay, they come into the start-finishing straight yet again. Johnson takes off. Seaton follows as they work their way down past the grandstand. Crowd has already seen Dick feeling the pressure, but they all jump to their feet and wave him on. And he opens that gap as they head down to the left-hander by the sand trap. Coming up on a Commodore now. Shell Ultra High Cosworth Ford Sierra with Johnson at the wheel.
I think the Nissan drivers are just loving this position. They know Dick is stretching all his resources to stay where he is. The traffic isn't helping him at all. There we are now with Seaton right on the bumper bar of the Sierra. And they're in a tremendous position just to gauge the race.
22 laps of 129 completed in the Castrol 500, coming to you live across the 7 network and to our international audience from Sandown in Melbourne, Australia. At the top end of the circuit, it's Johnson narrowly in front of Glenn Seaton in the Nissan Skyline. George Fury, his teammate, runs in third.
Having a little look now, and Glenn will be trying to place himself right on the bumper bar of that little Ford to get it slipstream on the main straight, and hopefully do to...
Here he comes.
Yes.
Thinking about it. Oh, Dick gets it a bit sideways over the curb. So Seaton's not under any pressure now. He's just returning the compliments of probably...
Yes, Dick is definitely tippy-toeing it through these slower parts, and in fact holding up the Nissan quite considerably. But the horsepower still saving him in a straight line. Oh, get right rear tire in the mud there. You know that feeling?
Well, Johnson will be frustrating Glenn Seaton because, well, ever he can tiptoe through that part. Here comes Johnson now, headed for the pits. He'll hand the lead over to Glenn Seaton, so Seaton will now assume the lead in the Castrol 500. Johnson coming in for a quick pit stop. Across the line now goes Seaton. He leads it. Fury is in second spot and will get the gap shortly back to third, of course, to Jimmy Richards.
They didn't get that car up very quickly.
Far from it. Johnson is going to put Neville Crichton in. Richards goes across the line now, so they've probably got probably an 8-second lead.
Well, Dick will be thinking about Bathurst because they wouldn't have relinquished the driving position if they were super serious about the finish of this race. They want to get their drivers with some miles under them.
There's our race leader, Glenn Seaton, car number 15, the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline, and of course Georgie Fury sits right in behind him in car number 30. The Johnson car is now back out on the racetrack with Neville Crichton at the wheel. They've been passed, of course, by Jim Richards in car number 1. As the car resumes in the race, should be still running, we believe, 7th on the road. We'll confirm that for you at the moment. So he's dropped 6 spots. We'll see how Neville can get to grips very quickly with the Cosworth Sierra. It was blindingly fast here on Friday in practice. In fact, he's under a bit of pressure from Murray Carter himself, but still settling into the car as they go up to the top end of the circuit. He has plenty of time to pull back that deficit.
Well, they're all flirting with death coming onto the main straight there with that muddy patch just where the right rear tire would like to drop itself into. We would say we have a very good chance of having an incident there before the end of the day.
The skid lid kid, car number 15, Glenn Seaton, is the leader of the Castrol 500. Let's check them out on the Castrol Oils 8 Oil scoreboard. The kid leads it. Partner Georgie Fury runs in second. Jim Richards is third. Peter Brock is fourth. Ken Bajan and Bowkett run fifth in the Nissan. Sixth spot is Neville Crichton in the Dick Johnson Sierra. 7th, Larry Perkins. 8th, Murray Carter. 9th is Neil Crompton. And 10th, Warren Cullen. We'll be back.
And of course, they teamed together to win the Castrol 500 here last year and looking for a repeat performance. Well, only one of them can win today. Interesting to see which one of them gets the honour if they're still in front after they've gone another 102 laps, because that's how many laps remain as this long race unfolds here this afternoon at Sandown. There have been plenty of dramas already. Alan Grice having led early for 2 laps, and then the car expired with some, well, unknown fault at this stage. And of course, Dick Johnson, what a blistering performance in the number 18 Shell Ford Sierra Turbo, and then handing over to Neville Crichton after setting up a lead. Crichton, of course, after that driver change, coming back onto the track in 8th place. And Murray Carter's just on the track ahead of him. We might have a look at those in a moment, but George Fury on screen at the moment. And Seaton, I think, is getting away from him a little as the laps unwind now. George, I think, probably content just to keep young Glenn in his sights, though. And of course, they've got a pretty commanding lead over Jim Richards now holding down 3rd place.
There's Neville Crichton there, who has been coming back through the pack in car number 18, having a great scrap there, battling for 7th and 8th. So Crichton passes the veteran Murray Carter, and there's Neville Crichton, a man who loves his motorsport and would love nothing better than to be up doing a bit of race leading for a change.
Talking about Georgie Fury a few moments ago, he lost an awful lot of time in, what, half a lap back there. He seemed to get very, very sideways on one of the hairpins, and I think perhaps that was the reason. But it's worth keeping an eye to that car, because all may not be 100% with him.
At the moment, we're keeping an eye on whether or not Murray Carter can put a lot of pressure on Neville Crichton. As Dick Johnson remarked during his interview with Peter McKay in the pits only a few minutes ago, Neville hasn't had too many laps practice in the car, and they're trying to get him sorted out before Bathurst.
Well, he in fact came back onto the track with Crichton at the wheel in 7th spot, and whilst he was still getting the feel of things, Murray Carter slipped by him, and it's taken him quite a few laps to snatch that 7th spot back, and he still hasn't shaken Murray Carter off, not by any manner of means.
Murray's enjoying a tremendous season in the Netcom Nissan. There it is, car number 14.
He's a real old soldier, isn't he, Murray?
Well, Murray dates back to the old Armstrong 500. He's tooled big custom lines around without relief drivers. So he knows what it's all about, endurance racing, and he's been supported well this year by Netcom. And it's great to see him up and being very, very competitive and running at the top end of the field.
Unlike most old soldiers, Murray is not going to fade away.
Certainly not. He told me over the weekend that his intention is to stay touring car racing while ever the sponsorship support. I said, but as you head up to 60 years, you must be thinking about it. He said, no, when the sponsorship runs out, I'll quit. So Murray's going to hang in there for a few more years. Murray Carter running 8th at the moment. Let's check them out for you on the Castrol scoreboard. Young Glenn Seaton leads, Fury 2nd, Richards is 3rd, Brock is 4th, Kent Bajan and Bowkett run 5th, 6th spot held out by Larry Perkins, 7th of course by Neville Crichton, 8th by Murray Carter, 9th by Neil Crompton, and 10th now by John Giddings and Bruce Stewart in the Ford Sierra Cosworth. We'll be back in one of 129 from the Castrol 500, coming to you live across the 7 Network this afternoon. And John Giddings and Bruce Stewart in the Oxo Supercube Sierra run 10th on the road, and that's quite a good performance. I know it'll please Don Smith, who had hoped to co-drive the second team car, the second Oxo car, with Andrew Madecki this afternoon. So they've done well, Wilco.
They certainly have, and they'd want to do well too, for the amount of money that Don has poured into this team effort, and then to have something go as drastically wrong as it did yesterday for them with the 35 car that flipped at the bottom of the main straight with Don at the wheel. It was a big disappointment. That, by the way, is Neil Crompton in the number 6 Mobile Little Team Commodore, just getting the slip there from John Giddings.
He was running 9th on the track, and as you recall, as we went to our last break, Giddings had moved to top 10. Well, those positions have now changed as John Giddings takes the 34 car. Now up into 9th spot, Neil Crompton is 10th and doing a good job in the Mobile Commodore number 6. His co-driver this afternoon will be John Crook, the Australian Formula 2 star. So he has also acquitted himself rather well at touring cars. His second only start, and he's finished in the top 10 in his opening drive. It'll be interesting to see and have some reports from him later in the program, how he was coming to grips, of course, with the dobbing a microphone and a hat and changing everything around for a weekend. The Oxo Supercube team, of course, look very much like they were going to have pole position for this race yesterday with Andrew Madecki. He was already well and truly clear of the field, and then this happened. Donnie Smith, his co-driver, stepped in, hit the ripple strip and went end over end, and as you can see, buried the car in the sand. Now watch Smith as he comes back down. Bang! That cracked his helmet on the side of the roll cage, and he is sporting quite a shiner here today. So that took care of the pole winning car up until that time. Now the 34 car runs in 9th spot.
Yeah, battered and bruised Don Smith, but feeling a little better now, I think, to see the second car running up in a top 10 position. Overcast day here in Melbourne, and a bit on the cool side, but the drivers won't be complaining about that because it's a long haul, 129 laps around here, still 97 laps remaining rather, and that's the aerial view as we chase the cars up the back straight.
As you can see, they go beneath the bridge, then a very, very sharp left-hander. The old circuit goes on. Hopefully one day they might do a little change there to the infield section and hook up onto the old circuit. very, very hard on cars down through here, hard on the transmission. And there's our own. I'm sure you won't mind if we indulge with having a look how the voice you normally hear on our broadcast, Neil Crompton, is faring in the number 6 Mobile Commodore.
Maybe we should get an unbiased opinion, do you think, from Richard Hay, rather than you and I put the big raps on him?
I think he's put up a remarkable performance, really, when you consider I think this is only his second drive in the car. And it really is impressive the way that he's been able to go around here. He's consistent. I think that's one of the most important things. When you come to a long race like this, 500 Ks, 3.5 hours or so, it's very important that you're consistent. You turn in the same times, lap after lap after lap, and that he's been able to do, and running very well indeed with the number 6 car.
There he is, coming past the pits. Neil Crompton comes down the start-finishing straight, still running in the top 10 for Peter Brock's Mobile Commodore team. Coming up to some traffic in front of him, make no mistake. Got the Isuzus there and quite a batch of cars through the left-hander. He'll probably won't get a fair shot at these cars until the top of Motorcraft Rise.
Yes, there's a gaggle there, 3 or 4 in front of him. In fact, between him and John Giddings now, who's cleared away a bit. Crompton nails 1, nails 2. When he sees a bit of open space, he knows how to put the boot in, doesn't he?
Certainly does. A former Victorian motocross champ. Better known, I guess, to all of our network viewers as the voice. However, today he's the driver. Glenn Seaton continues to lead it. Farmer Fury is second. Jimmy Richards is third. Brock fourth. Graham Bowkett runs 5th on the road at the moment. 6th is Larry Perkins. 7th is Neville Crichton. 8th, Murray Carter. 9th, John Giddings. And 10th, Neil Crompton.
Castrol 500 after 35 laps, and car number 60 on screen at the moment, the Nissan Gazelle, being driven by Mark Scaife. Freddie Gibson believes in having youth on his side, and with Mark Scaife in the team and driving the Gazelle, he certainly picked one of the brightest young talents in Australia today.
He certainly is. Started from position number 32 in today's field. Currently leading the small car class, and 18th outright, Mark Scaife. I think Freddie Gibson has quite a talented young man there as a backstop for the team, doing the running in the Gazelle in the small car class just at the moment. Wouldn't surprise me to see him drafted into their outright assault a little later on in the year. And Freddie Gibson should be a happy man, am I right, Peter McKay?
Well, Fred Gibson, last year the Nissan Skylines produced the big 1-2 here in the Castrol 500. This year the cars weren't as favoured, but there they are. Around about lap 34 up front, running 1-2.
Long way to go yet, Peter. Like, it's only early days for the race. We've done our homework over the last few months, and we hope we were going to be competitive here. It looks like we are competitive, but whether we can keep it all together for the end of the race, I don't know yet. We aim to come in about lap 40. We're going to break into 2 pit stops and put fresh tyres on and let the guys go again. I think it's a changing sort of fad these days. Instead of having hard tyres and trying to get through on tyres, it's better to sort of change to a softer tyre and go as quick as you can for as short a time and stop, put new ones on again. So that's what we're trying to do today anyway, Peter.
So you're not too surprised that the cars are up there at the front of the field?
Not really. I think it's better being from the front. We seem to like being at the front somewhere on the race, and as long as I watch Jimmy to see what Jimmy's doing, he's the guy I think we have to try and beat.
Well, Jim probably has one less pit stop than the Skylines. That means you guys have got to pick up 1 minute. Can you do that?
I think so now. We're 20-something seconds ahead now, but I'll go up there and have to sort of drag Frank over the head or something and slow him down later on the race probably. But no, I think we can, and be interested towards the finish of the race.
They might be old cars, but they're still in this Castrol 500, Mike.
Peter McKay there in the pits with Freddie Gibson, and it's quite remarkable, Richard, that these cars and the way they've been developed here in Australia are really leading the way as far as the Nissan factory in Japan is concerned, and it's this car that's being developed in Australia that they're probably going to promote next year for their international campaign.
A lot of people have wished, they prayed for this car to come over. There were rumours that Alan Grice was going to bring one over this year. It hasn't happened, and I think it really would have set Europe on fire. They would have been very, very surprised by the way that it goes. Now, though, I wonder, with the RS 500 Cosworth that's just come out, if you watch the way it goes past it on the straight, it might as well be standing still.
Yeah, they might have missed the boat, you think?
It could well be. I know there's a new car shortly to be homologated and so on, and that could well put things right for them. But this car, as it stands at the moment, is going to be winning on reliability and not on speed.
Okay, the way the umpire calls the score, it's 93 laps remaining and 15. Glenn Seaton is in the lead from teammate George Fury in car number 30, and Jim Richards holding down third spot still in the first of the BMW M3s. In fact, their second car, the number 3 car, has been shuffled all the way back in the field. The car being driven by Robbie Francevic and Ludwig Finau. I don't know what is amiss, and I don't know whether, in fact, they have made a quick pit stop to rectify some problem, but I think they're at least one lap down on the leading division.
Yeah, I think you're right there, and as far as they're concerned, they must be looking for that extra pit stop that they're going to have to make later on as being their only one and their salvation as far as this race is concerned.
Well, we just had this car 3. As I said, is well back in the field and position 20 at the moment. So, yeah, they've had some problems, obviously, but they're still out there struggling, and it is a case of survival in this race. Pleasure to welcome to the 7 Network microphone at the motor racing, for a change, instead of the tennis, John Alexander. What are you doing here? Enjoying yourself?
Yes, I am. I'm a car nut of the first order, and I wouldn't miss a chance to come out and watch sedan car racing.
Would you swap places with Neil Crompton at the moment?
Not right at this moment, no.
Well, he's having a lot of fun out there, and I guess as a car racing fan as you are, you can appreciate what a buzz it is for him to have the opportunity to drive in one of the Brock team cars.
Yes, and he's doing very, very well, isn't he?
Yeah, he certainly is. The second of the BMW M3s on the track at the moment, and it's a shame that they have got problems, because it's great to see Robbie Francevic back in Australia, the touring car champion of 1986, of course, and a real character, as John Alexander can well testify. You had dinner with him the other evening.
Yes, we did, and he really is a character, and very, very fired up about his opportunity with the BMWs. And he really does fancy his chances at Bathurst.
As a keen follower of the sport, and you're obviously, you know, most of the top drivers involved in the race here, you have your assessment of the race. You missed the start of it, obviously, because it took you some time to get here from your previous commitments with Sports World. But how do you see the race unfolding at the moment?
Well, I was a little bit surprised. You know, all the news was on the Sierras and how fast they were, and then that was the main opposition would have appeared to have been the M3s, which are also very fast and very reliable, and yet it's the Nissans that are showing the way at this stage, and doesn't really look to nothing really to indicate why they won't go ahead and win.
Well, a long way to go, as we said. I think the fact that Neville Crichton hasn't had a turn at the wheel for quite some time until stepping in to the Sierra today is part of the problem. He's taking it a little slow and steady, and with so many laps to go and fuel and tyres to come, of course, they've still got plenty of time. There's Neville, a man who obviously wants to, if you speak to him, he'll tell you, run his own operation next year for the Touring Car Championship. Very keen to do so, in fact. And of course, we saw him previously here in Australia with the JPS BMW team to good effect. He's a great operator, very laid back, very casual guy, takes everything in his stride. And he really was desperate to get behind the wheel today and clock up a few laps. Another of the very big New Zealand contingent competing in the race here today and co-driving with Dick Johnson. As it turns out, Johnson's number 17 car failing to take its place at the head of the grid for today's race. A problem, engine problems caused by fuel, believe it or not. The fuel in Victoria is different to the fuel in Queensland. It's only a fraction of 1% octane percent difference in the fuel, but that's how much difference it made to Dick's car. That's what he's telling me.
Sounds fuelish, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does sound fuelish. You're quite right. Good one, J.A. Let's check the Castrol 500 scoreboard. Glenn Seaton on screen through race cam is the leader of the race from teammate George Fury in second spot. Third spot, Jim Richards in the JPS BMW. Then the 05 Commodore of Peter Brock. Ken Bajan in the New Zealand Nissan in fifth spot. Larry Perkins in the NZ Connectors Commodore holding down sixth. Then Crichton, car number 18 in seventh spot. Murray Carter holds down eighth. Then John Giddings in the Oxo Turbo Sierra in ninth spot. And good old Neil Crompton hanging in there in position number 10.
Leader Glenn Seaton drives into the pits. Car just coasted into the pits that time. There is not going to be a pit stop. Glenn Seaton is out of the Castrol 500. His teammate George Fury now assumes the role of leader. What tragic luck for young Seaton.
Well, there's a professional team in operation. They've accepted the inevitable. They've just parked it, not giving it too much concern. And Freddie Gibson's out on the pit lane, concerned now about keeping George in a lead position. Tough luck for Glenn, but that's life in the fast lane. When you push them hard, they fall hard.
There's Bo Seaton, Glenn's dad, who of course does all the engine work for the team. We're getting into the area of the race now where there'll be pit stops galore shortly, and very, very overcast conditions here at Sandown now.
See the heat rash on Glenn's face. There's no joyride out there, even with that air duct getting fresh air into his car, and he's not wearing a full face helmet. He's still looking a bit flushed. He's putting plenty into it. You can't lead any Group A race in the world today without a lot of energy going into it. But a great run while he was out there. Pity for John Bowe, who didn't get a drive today. Would have liked to have released a little nervous energy, Richard, and get primed up for Bathurst.
Yeah, one wonders actually. I was just thinking that Nissan, the way that they had to push it earlier on to try and stay with the Sierra of Johnson, I wonder what, if any damage that's done to it, and whether or not that could be the reason. I noticed that George Fury was hanging back a little bit while the great battle was going on, and that might prove to have been a wise move.
Well, Freddie runs a tight team, and he runs a very disciplined team, and I'm sure if the instructions were given to George to take it easy for a while, that's exactly what he would have done. He's a professional driver, and he knows how to keep a team running smoothly, and that's by working together, not against one another. I'm sure he had all the potential in the world to run up there alongside Glenn anytime he wanted to, but he did lie back, and if that was the game plan, well, at this point in the race, it's proving to be positive for them.
Another very professional guy there, Larry Perkins, getting the tail out of line a bit with the Commodore, but he's been the most consistent of the Commodores all season this year, and running very well indeed. And he must have an awful lot of confidence at this stage of the race, with Denny Holm, of course, waiting to take over in the pits.
Yes, and Denny will just get in it and drive it. He's not too worried about how it's been set up. Larry's a very good development driver, and he's got one of the finest handling Commodores in the country. And as such, Denny will just say, fine, Larry, you're happy with it, I'm happy, and I'll put my foot down.
We've been watching Larry Perkins gaining all the time on Graham Bowkett. Graham at the moment in the privately entered New Zealand Nissan Skyline is running fourth, and right behind him Larry Perkins, and Larry has been gaining on Bowkett in the last 4 or 5 circuits. So a fascinating race in midfield as Perkins in car number 11 sweeps out of that turn, and there's Bowkett going through in the white Nissan Skyline. So Larry's Castrol 500 is far from over. And the information we have from our chopper pilot is that there are very, very strong storms not too far away from the racetrack. So the selection of tyres at the pit stop is going to be critical. It's going to rain. I think most of the teams would prefer it to rain now.
Well, I had a quiet word earlier on, as there we've got one of the Nissans there into the pits. That's the Fury car, the sole remaining Nissan. Fury out, Terry Shield in. All 4 being changed again.
Terry knows his way around Sandown, and he certainly knows the car. He's off a very, very nice stop. Didn't appear to be any lag there whatsoever, and back out to give it all he's got with a fresh set of Dunlops to glide him around for another 40-odd laps.
Well, he'll come out actually right behind Larry Perkins, running in 5th on the road. So Terry Shield hasn't dropped that far back off the pack, and keeping in mind that Jimmy Richards still has to finish his pit stop off. A lot of the teams haven't so far been able to, or haven't elected their pit stops at the moment. Tell you what, it's almost been the the kiss goodbye to lead this race today.
Well, I think Jim is still in a good position. They get good fuel economy with a very well developed engine under that BMW bonnet, and this is where Jim's position is going to escalate a bit. If he can stay out there for another 3, maybe 4 or 5 laps and gain just a little bit more ground while the others have lost time in the pits and the co-drivers get into the groove again. And if they do plan only to stop once, well, that's going to be very interesting how it'll all land up with the last 20 laps of the race.
Yeah, I was talking to Perkins earlier on in the pits, and he was saying that he maintained there was no way that one of these Commodores would go with just one stop and a quick one at the end even. He said there was only one way to do it, and that was to split the race into 3 even parts. So I think we can expect to see him into the pits fairly shortly too.
Yes, well, I think that's a good game plan for the Commodore. There's nothing going to be wrong with that. There's no other way you could win Bathurst at 1,000 kilometers.
The Castrol 500 continues. Race leader is now Jimmy Richards. Second spot, Peter Brock. Third spot is Ken Bajan, Graham Bowkett. Fourth, Larry Perkins. And fifth is Farmer Fury, Terry Shield. We'll be back in just a moment.
Well, Glenn Seaton was bowling along very nicely at the head of the field at the Castrol 500 today when suddenly the lights went out. What happened?
That's right. We think it's done a turbo. Until we get it back and pull at the bits, we don't really know, but we're pretty sure it is. We're having a fairly good run up until now, but hopefully one day we'll fix our turbo problems.
How were the tyres hanging out? You were running a softer compound today, but seemed to be holding onto the pace pretty well.
Yeah, they were fairly good. The car was fairly slidey in the back, but the tyres were holding up fairly good. We only had sort of 5 laps to go before we were having a pit stop, but
so can the Skyline, the lone Peter Jackson Skyline, hang on to and win this race here today?
I think so. George is looking fairly comfortable at the moment, and we've still got another stop to do yet, so anything can happen, but I think we can do it anyway.
Glenn Seaton won the Castrol 500 12 months ago. There'll be no repeat to win. There'll be no repeat win here today.
You're not wrong, even if the words didn't come out right, Pete. But what you were saying was absolutely correct. That is, of course, unless the number 30 car, the Georgie Fury, who was a part of that last year with Glenn Seaton, if he can come back through the field thanks to Terry Shield, I would expect George, if they have the other pit stop a little later on, will climb back in for the sprint to the flag. At the moment, though, car number 44, Trevor Crowe in the Vickard BMW, running 12th on the road at the moment. Only one of quite a number of New Zealanders who seem to be coming across and involving themselves in Australian motorsport. There's more Longinglanders here than Australians today, Alan.
I have to talk to the immigration department about this for sure. I thought Bob Hawke would be the man, but I think probably we better go right to the department and get some action in a hurry. I would think probably a special import license for race drivers born in New Zealand, something around $5,000 or $60,000 would probably be a good number to we could put into the CAM's coffers, and perhaps contribute it to dressing up flag marshals or whatever part of the business at the moment that's looking a little sad in the finances.
Yes, they've certainly
sent it down to Moffat Enterprises.
Oh,
actually,
it's 23 off the racetrack.
It's Tony Cabbage with one of the Commodores.
Oh, I tell you what, it's catching. Number 40 also has got off for a run. We saw that off just a little earlier in the sand trap. That's the Wills Henley Nissan Skyline. He's found the right direction to go. No sooner you put a wrap on a Kiwi in one spins. Trevor Crowe, of course, one of the best races. I think I saw Trevor drive was at the Nissan Mobile 500 Wellington 2 years back. He and Tony Longhurst had the race absolutely parcelled up until a pit stop saw one of the, I think it was the front wheel.
Actually, what they saw was a mobile Commodore in their rear view mirrors, and they got such a fright. They went into the pits and they didn't know how to start the car again.
Well, they did that, and when they finally did get it out, the front wheel fell off, and that cost Tony Longhurst the race. He was in a good position at that stage, and Trevor Crowe has been racing for quite a number of years, and has a slight preference towards BMW equipment. Keep an eye on Trevor by the time they get to the James Hardy 1000. Might be timely also to remind you about our unbroken 10-hour coverage of Australia's great motor race. That is the James Hardy World Touring Car Championship round, coming live from Mount Panorama at Bathurst on the 7 Network. Also to New Zealand, to England, throughout the United States and throughout Europe. 21 days from today, and a huge gathering of internationals coming for this year's race, including the Eggenberger Ford Sierra team, Andy Rouse, all of the factory BMWs, including a number of Formula One drivers. Jacques Lafitte, Alessandro Nannini will be there, Mercedes Sturmitz, and a whole host of drivers never seen in Australia before in touring cars. Keep that in mind.
And a lot of us are going to wish we'd never seen them in Australia before, Mike. They're so fast.
Well, we had an incident just a second ago. Let's catch that on the Castrol replay for you. The Henley going off of the 40 car. So when you catch a sand trap here at Sandown, you really catch one. He was running 13th in the race, despite that little off-track excursion about 20 laps ago. And he managed to skate around the outside of it, land in the grass, and then was able to continue. Probably just dropped one spot as a result of that.
How lucky was he over that, though, that the thing didn't roll?
It didn't bite in the way the Sierra did yesterday. Yes, that's always a question of is it good luck or good management, but we'll give the driver the benefit of the doubt. Say, I'm sure he handled his 9-iron very well in the sand trap that time. Just watching the BMWs here reminds me of how many of them I've been chasing around in Europe this year. I don't think the Australian audience, and certainly a lot of the drivers, are really prepared for the onslaught of these German teams that are going to come out here with the fastest BMWs in the world. Not to take any credit away from Frank Gardner's team here in Australia, but quite honestly, the speed and the energy, the style in which the drivers from the Schnitzer and the Linder teams operate, it's just everything for the fatherland, foot to the floor. The machinery holds up under very trying circumstances, and I don't care really how many big cars are in the field at Bathurst. The little M3s are going to be a real force to be contended with.
Bill O'Brien, we just saw there in for a pit stop in the Everlast battery Commodore. Brand spanking new car at Calder only 3 weeks ago for the Yokohama 500k race there. They had the race absolutely locked up. Larry Perkins drove 98 laps, handed over to Bill O'Brien, and they lost the lead in the last lap. Just a lengthy pit stop where old Bill hadn't had any laps in the car. He bought the car off Larry, but elected Larry to do all the development work. And Bill, of course, had hoped to join the field for the Hardy, but because of the huge entry list, looks like a number of the leading drivers might have the opportunity to make their annual pilgrimage to Mount Panorama.
I honestly think that anybody that is a reserve at Bathurst shouldn't be too dismayed at this stage. Anything can happen. We've seen what's happened to a number of cars here today that didn't get to the start line, and I'm sure that if I had a reserve entry at Bathurst, I'd be getting my act together.
Yes, I feel there's been a lot of criticism about the locals being shut out of their own race, but I do take that point. There'll be a lot of drivers with international licenses going to Bathurst in 3 weeks' time. I'll tell you what, if 18 arrive in Australia, I'll be very interested to see if, and I will lose money on a wager if 18 of them make the starting field by the time they start bouncing a few of those off the concrete walls.
I'd agree with that.
That's for certain. That's for certain.
Bill O'Brien, of course, Brian Sampson, the Everlast Batteries Commodore V8, one of the cars prepared by Larry Perkins that's running so well. Was running 10th, as I mentioned before, come up through the field, is now back to 13th due to that pit stop. And Trevor Crowe, who we followed before that in the BMW, has in fact now made it into 10th due to that pit stop. So they continue. Still clouding over here at Sandown. Information still is that pretty severe showers in the area. Let's recap the placings for you on the Castrol Oils 8 Oil scoreboard. Jimmy Richards leads the race. Brocky is second. Ken Bajan and Bowcat third. George Fury and Terry Shield fourth. Crichton and Johnson are fifth. 6th spot, the veteran Murray Carter and Dennis Hawley. 7th is Larry Perkins. 8th, John Giddings and Bruce Stewart in the Sierra. 9th, Neil Crompton and John Crook. It continues. And in 10th spot, Trevor Crowe and Jimmy Keogh. And we'll be back in just a sec. Lap 50 of 1:29 in the Castrol 500 at Sandown in Victoria. The car we're following at the moment is, of course, the JPS BMW number 3. The man at the wheel is the man who won the 1986 Australian Touring Car Championship for Volvo, and that's yet another Kiwi in Robbie Francevic. We haven't seen him in Australia competing throughout the year, but Robbie, of course, is co-driving today with Ludwig Finauer, and it's nice to see him back. Extroverted character is Robbie Francevic. He should be able to help organise Frank Gardner, and in fact, Robbie's always been known to call a spade, and Frank, having to deal with that, said yesterday he might put Araldite chewing gum in his mouth for Bathurst. Robbie Francevic, what a colourful character. Here are just a few details on our Nissan Stat.
The 1986 Australian Touring Car Champion Robbie Francevic has joined forces today with his former on-track enemies. Next Friday's birthday boy has landed a neat present in the form of the ultra-fast BMW M3. Robbie first came to our attention back in 1985 in that not-so-pretty turbo Volvo. By only the 3rd round of the National Tin Top title, he made us eat our words, showing the Swedemobile could do more than just carry dentists. Francevic showed he could rub shoulders with the world's best, and last year went on to take the touring car crown. The Volvo dealer team ceased to exist beyond 1986, but the Aucklander is here to stay.
Robbie Francevic, and he's doing quite well, 15th spot at the moment. BMWs making their presence felt in the Castrol 500, and they'll get stronger as this race goes on, and I'm sure Allan Moffat will agree with me.
Yes, well, the gap is now out to 35 seconds. Jim has just waited for that stop from the mobile team. Peter's come in and handed the car over to Graham Parsons, and I honestly think this is exactly what Jim's been praying for. If it starts to rain a little bit, he'll even be in a better position. We're coasting towards the halfway mark. That's where he's aiming for, and he'll be away like a rocket with a fast stop himself.
Well, 2 pit stops from the mobile team. Peter Brock was in, running 2nd on the road, pitted, and his Parsons, as Allan mentioned, is out now running 5th. And Neil Crompton is in, handing over to John Crook, and with the kid, Peter McKay.
Well, 2nd place at the 48th lap mark. Peter Brock, you must be pretty pleased with things today, although we noticed the weather's starting to turn a bit bad here at Sandown.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of experience is that when it starts to rain, you put your co-driver in. So David Parsons is out there weathering all this. He'll go well, though, because after all, he drove the car at Oran Park a couple of weeks ago in the wet and hung on to Richo very well. So, yeah, we're happy. Yeah.
Is a 10th victory here at Sandown out of the question? You're starting to think that perhaps you could pull one off?
Well, yeah, I'm always optimistic. I'm the eternal optimist. Yeah, well, looking at the attrition rate and the way cars are sort of breaking down here, which we know that Sandown produces a high attrition rate, to keep the car in one piece, yeah, you're always a chance.
Right, we've got an aspiring young driver here next to you, Neil Crompton. A little bit chaotic here in the Brock pits with the 2 cars coming in at the same time for a driver change of tyres.
I had to talk to him about it. I got the in signal from the boys, and I think at the same time Pete radioed in to say that he was out of gas. So we've arrived here just in front of the Brock Express, and we had to go back on the B team ranks, but I think we went okay.
He knows how to get another drive.
I know who the boss is, you see. It pays to do that in this business, but I think we're going okay. I'm not fit enough, that's the first thing I've learned. I'm sort of finding it pretty hard work at the moment, but I'm enjoying it. Beats wearing that crook thing.
So you're going to go and have a Bex and a lie down and come back and have a run a bit later?
Yeah, I think so. There's a little bit of a noise coming from the back of the car somewhere, Pete. I'm not quite sure what it is. It's like a squawking sort of a sound, and I suspect from watching it on the other side here the last few years, transmissions take a hell of a pounding with all that backloading coming back through the car, so it might be gearbox or thrust bearing or maybe diff or something like that. But the one bonus is that last time...
call it driver abuse.
The bonus is that last time I had to drive in the wet, this time Crookie does, so good luck to him.
And what in the hell is a squawking sound, Mike?
Who knows, it sounds like a co-commentator. Thank you, Peter McKay. getting more words from Neil than he was from Peter.
I'm very pleased to see that Neil's aware that the drivers have got to be fit, and the television does make it look easy, but I think if people watching at home have a good look at the faces of all the drivers that come out after 40, 45 laps around here, they can see that there's a lot of energy going into producing a winning vehicle.
At the moment, everything running true to form for Jimmy Richards as he continues to lead the Castrol 500. Scored a victory here 2 years ago under very trying circumstances, but the pace that he was able to set in the early part of the event, setting off the Nissans, as Allan Moffat predicted, has certainly paid off for him and also for Frank Gardner. At the moment, the Gazelle goes through, car number 60, still leading the class in this afternoon's Castrol 500. Coming up to put a lap on the Gazelle is in fact Neville Crichton in Dick Johnson's Shell Cosworth Sierra. He's been able to get back past Murray Carter again, but hasn't been able to run away from Carter. And they've been out there hard at it for probably about 20 laps.
Looking at the Gazelle, actually, it's interesting that that car is running over here, because in Europe the class structure is different. There's an up to 1600 and then 1600 to 2.3 or 2.5 litre class, which is what the BMW M3 is aimed at. The Gazelle will end up in that class and obviously wouldn't be competitive in Europe, whereas here in Australia with the different class structure, it tends to be.
For which Mark Scaife is everlastingly grateful. And he's doing a damn good job in it. It's interesting that he's not being disgraced out there, even against the much more powerful cars. You see Murray Carter slipping by him there in the Nissan, as you'd expect. But Scaife more than holding his own in the Gazelle. That light misty rain is now sweeping in over Sandown, and it's looking very dodgy indeed. There'll be a few anxious team managers down in pit row at the moment, I'd say.
Murray Carter, being one of the oldest hands in the race, will be hanging on for as long as he can now.
Murray's trademark, isn't it?
Well, he's going to try and see whether or not the weather makes its mind up one way or the other, whether it's worth going back when he goes into the pits, whether it's worth going on to slicks or wet tyres, and that's the mark of experience.
Well, it's one of the tricky things about racing in Melbourne at this time of year, when it can change at the snap of your fingers, and it could bucket down any minute, and in 25 minutes from now it could be clear blue sky and sunshine.
We've got 54 laps of 129 completed in the Castrol 500 from Sandown in Victoria this afternoon. We have been checking out Murray Carter. Let's have a look at the scoreboard at the moment. Jimmy Richards continues to lead it. Ken Bagent and Graham Balquette from Longingland are second. Fury and Sheila third. Brock and Parsons are fourth. Crichton and Johnson 0.22 seconds back to Ken Bagent and Graham Balquette. Further 23 seconds back to Neville Crichton. And right behind Crichton, only less than 2 seconds, Murray Carter. Nice to have our race score system up and working. Nigel Greenway here with us doing scoring as well today.
I'd say that the M3s will be expected in the pits somewhere in the next 7 or 8 laps or so, something like that. They'll be looking to make a stop at almost exactly half distance, I think. And earlier on in the race, before the demise of Alan Grice, we were discussing the fact that importing a driver such as PERCY gave them the double-barrel shotgun approach, to quote Allan Moffat. Jim Richards, of course, has a very similar advantage because he's got Tony Longhurst to take over the car when that comes into the pits.
Yeah, exactly. As you could see that shot just a moment ago down at the JPS pit, they're all standing by and ready for the pit stop. A little casual at the moment, so I guess that's an indication that it will be a couple of laps yet before they come in. You'll notice them tense up when time does draw near. But Longhurst is a real hard charger. There are a few other drivers around that would apply other descriptions to him, I think, but
diplomat.
he puts the boot in, not only to his own car, but to a few others as well when it's required. He gives no big pardons, old Tony, out on the track. I say old Tony, it's young Tony. He certainly knows the short way home. Jim at the car at the moment, everything cool, calm and collected, as I said, at the JPS BMW pit.
They'd be looking for a stop somewhere in the region of around about 25 to 30 seconds to change the driver. All 4 wheels when you consider the extra work that goes into it, alongside of a 9 or 10 second pit stop for a Grand Prix car, is not bad at all.
It's pretty good. Second of the M3s, by the way. The Finnair Francevic car is still out circulating and doing pretty well in 15th position on the track, considering that they had a lot of early trouble and slipped a couple of laps. Still don't know what it was, but the spoiler is missing off the front of the car, so that would indicate that they've had a close encounter of some kind.
As cars get more and more high-tech, and the M3 is a perfect example of that, losing the front spoiler off the car really will affect the handling of the car to quite a large degree. So it's got that problem to cope with, as well as being so far down the field.
Jim Richards is the quiet achiever, I guess, in motorsport in this country. Doesn't have a lot to say, always has a ready smile, never seems to be flustered at all. But boy, when the flag drops and the man says go, he certainly knows how to do that.
I guess being a professional race car driver, Frank Gardner gives the instructions. The whole idea of this is winning. Whenever we keep winning, we keep retaining sponsorship and the interest of BMW and Ronnie Meacham and the other associated sponsors they have running on the car. And Jim just fulfills that role so beautifully. No fuss driver, always be relied upon to bring a car home straight. And very rarely do you see Jim involved with bumping panels with any other driver. I think once only this year, which was the Glen Seek incident at Oran Park in the final of the Australian Touring Car Championship. But he's a rain master as well, and as Richard said only so well a little earlier, the conditions today were just made for the BMW. Other teams ducking into the pits, thinking about changing rubber. Jim's been able to just power through, and this car will run as strong as this right through to lap 129.
70 laps remaining in the race. Positions at the top unchanged. JPS BMW number 1, Jim Richards at the wheel, continues to lead with a 43-second margin over second place getter, car 30, the first of the Peter Jackson Nissan entries, and car 25, the New Zealand Nissan of Kent Bagent and Graham Bowkett, holding down third spot. Jimmy Richards doing it well for the boss, Frank Gardner, and the boss, in fact, is going to talk with Peter McKay right now.
The Castrol 500 is probably going as planned for the JPS BMW team. You can't get better than first, Frank Gardner.
Well, at this stage, there's an awful long way to go. We're not even halfway, so you can slip out of this one real quickly. There's an awful lot of good cars still running out there, very healthy.
The second car, the car of Ludwig Finauer and Robbie Francevic, had some problems in the pits for a lap or so.
Yeah, it had a bit of a slip off the road, and it's done some damage on the radiator and the front spoilers, and it's not handling all that clever, but it's soldiering on. You just hope there's no more ramifications out of it. Should make one stop for fuel, and that should be about it for the day.
So what's the strategy for Jim Richards and Tony Longhurst? They should be due into the pits fairly soon, I gather.
In about the next 8 laps, I'll be in to take on fuel, and I'll slip Tony into the cockpit, and we'll take it from there. With the weather hanging around, we could have another stop in our hands for wet weather tyres, or you just don't know. It's just a long day.
Mike, the team in the box seat of the Castrol 500, JPS BMW.
You're right there, young Peter, who of course is covering the activity today in the pit area. Frank Gardner, not exuding confidence, but he never does. He's just very proud of the way his number 1 boy handles the car up front leading the pack, and Robbie Francevic, of course, after having a scrape a little earlier, continues on, still running about 15th on the road in the second of the JPS BMWs, trying to claw his way back up through the pack. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see a lap put on him very shortly by Larry Perkins and Denny Holm. Perkins still at the wheel, car number 11 coming up behind Robbie at this stage through this left-hander. Bill O'Brien just in front of the Everlast Battery Commodore, gives right away to the turn for him to go through. There's the number 86 car. It's just a case of which direction it should be going. I don't think it's that way. He's trying trying to get off the circuit, the driver of car number 86.
Darrell Hendrick at the wheel, and not going very far at the moment. Where he is going, he's going slowly.
Here's Perkins coming up the back straight now, on the inside of the Bill O'Brien Everlast Commodore. Francevic comes through there. Coming down to the right-hander, and the Perkins Holm NZ Fluid Connectors Commodore goes through. So Robbie Francevic there, Denny Holm now at the wheel of the 11 car. And good to see Denny back on the racetrack in a Commodore, Larry's choice for the endurance races. Might be timely now to check them all out on the Castrol scoreboard. Our race leader, Jimmy Richards. Second is George Fury, or Terry Shield at the wheel. Third is Graham Bowkett. Fourth is Neville Crichton. Fifth spot held by Murray Carter. Sixth, Peter Brock. Seventh is Larry Perkins and Holm at the wheel now. Eighth is Giddings. Ninth, Neil Crompton Crook. 10th, Trevor Crowe and James Keogh. Running 11th on the road at the moment and down 3 laps, as you can see. Graham Cameron down 3 also in 12th spot, Warren Cullen. Running 13th is Bill O'Brien. They're also down 3 in the Commodore. 14th spot, Robbie Francevic, down 3. From 15th spot, Dick Johnson and Greg Hansford. We won't worry about that in car number 17. 16th, Graham Lorimer and John Sachs, -4. Same for Crosby and McRae, who run 17th. Mark Scaife and Grant Jarrett, 18th spot. They're down 4 as well. And 19th, car number 24, Bill Bryce and Leo Gagan, a BMW, down 5 laps, and rounding out the top 20, 36, Ray Ellis and John Lusty in a Holden. Also live and exclusively on the 7 network around Australia. And also to our viewers, highlight packages of this very exciting race in New Zealand, United States and throughout England. At the moment, some joy for those English folk. We'll be very keen to see how Win Percy is performing, keeping in mind set down to co-drive with Alan Grice in car number 2. Gricey took the lead in lap number 1 but disappeared on lap number 2. He in fact was the first car into the pits. They had a problem. They're hooked up to a computer, and apparently the system went down, and they've been working on the car ever since. So Win Percy actually gets to have a few laps around Sandown this afternoon, and I'm sure Richard Hay would agree with us that there are not too many drivers with the credentials out there of Win Percy.
Certainly aren't. There can't be many drivers that have driven as many varying sorts of touring cars as he has. This year alone, he's already had a run in testing, admittedly, with Tom Walkinshaw's Holdens. He's run Andy Rouse's Ford Sierra Cosworth. He's run Graham Good's Ford Sierra Cosworth, so he'll be well in the know as to just how quick those cars are. But he was saying earlier on how easy this car was to drive. You know, he mentioned that it had got power steering, which is something that TW doesn't like, and how easy it is to drive, and how much he was looking forward to driving it around Bathurst.
Yes, I think they were a little unlucky to have problems in the opening lap of this race, because one thing that was very, very obvious, and that was that the time set by Grice over the 2 days of practice and qualifying were matched in almost to the 100th of a second by Win Percy.
Yeah, I think the first session that Win went out, he'd only done 13 laps in the car, and he ended up second quickest in that session, which gives you some idea of just how good he is.
Number 7, Cameron and Wilkerson in the Can-Am Commodore. Can-Am Constructions there.
11th spot on the track.
11th spot, so yep. they've done extremely well.
Came off 17th position on the starting grid. Of course, there have been a few dropouts have helped promote them up the order, but to have survived this long and still to be going strong, they've done a commendable job. Cameron and Wilkinson, apart from Can-Am, a basically unadorned and very clean-looking Commodore, and obviously one that's running well. Another couple of drivers with that you don't hear a lot about, but they've got a fair depth of experience between them, and they've put a lot of money into getting this car together. And they went into this race this afternoon confident that they would last out the difference, and they reckon that was more than plenty of others could say. And as things are turning out, they're going to be proved right. Off the top of the hill at the back of the circuit and into the S-bends that were added to Sandown here a couple of seasons back now, amid much controversy. Bends that a lot of people would like to see scrapped and see a return to the old circuit. Tony's got the helmet on, so it must be getting close for the JPS team, for Richards to come in for the changeover. And now we take 7's race cam from inside the Bob Jane Team Arts Commodore with Win Percy at the wheel. And so Gracie lives up to his promise. He said they'd get it back out on the track, both for Win Percy's sake and for Racecam's sake. And we can bring you real close-ups of the on-track action. There's John Crook in the number 6 dealer team Commodore. Win Percy anxious to go faster.
Percy settling down very, very quickly. Graham Bowkett, as we reach halfway mark in the Castrol 500, was running second on the road, went in for a very, very quick pit stop, came out running in 7th, so the order is still Jimmy Richards, race leader. Terry Shield runs second in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. Third was the 05 Commodore. Fourth is Crichton. Fifth is Murray Carter. Sixth is Perkins. Bowkett now back to 7th on the road, and 8th John Giddings and Stewart. So Wynn's giving the curbs a bit of a workout around Sandown.
Europeans have a bit of an affinity to curbs. Allan Moffat, I'm sure, would agree with that, but they tend to use the curbs a lot of the time. And Tom Walkinshaw is renowned for having to replace all the suspension after a flying lap in qualifying. Wynn, on the whole, actually tends to be a very tidy driver, and I think it's just the pure bulk and size of the Commodore that means that he has to ride the curbs a little coming out of some of the corners.
Coming down to show you just a lap around Sandown International Raceway.
Past the old pit area there on the left.
3.9 kilometres. Circuit coming up to the left-hander at Castrol. It's down on the brakes.
This is the long back straight. There is a slight right-hand kink in it, just about here.
It measures 910 metres from that point up to beneath the bridge here on the left-hander. Cars are absolutely flat out here.
This is the best bit for my money, because when you're sitting in the car, you don't know. You can't see which way the circuit goes when you get to the top there. And it looks very much as though it goes straight on around where the old circuit used to go.
Oops, looks like trouble. They've already been in the pits. Ken Bagent in the privately entered Nissan Skyline number 25. They were running second behind Jim Richards. They went to the pits, came out running 7th, and problems. Ken Bagent does get the Nissan going again up the back straight. Wasn't as though he just came out of the pits and then ran into problems. He'd been out on the circuit for about 3 laps after that pit stop. Whether or not there's anything major, we'll have to wait and see whether he calls to the pits, or he has an engine problem or not. And they have been the sleepers in the race so far, the 2 Kiwis, Bagent and Bowkett. Kent at the wheel now. Graham Bowkett doing the first stint in the Union's shipping number 25 Nissan Skyline.
Car looks to be running okay again now. I don't know what the problem could have been. As you said, we'll soon see if he's going to make a pit stop or not. Around through the S's at the back of the circuit.
Good to see Ken Bagent back and racing again. Had a absolutely horrendous accident last year when he upended at Manfield in New Zealand, and the car just barrel rolled with such force that actually knocked Ken's helmet off during the wreck.
No pit stop.
No. And he was out of commission for the rest of the season. He's back stronger than ever, enjoys his racing, and obviously teaming very successfully with Graham Bowkett again. I noticed just in the background there was Neville Crichton, who's closing dramatically on this Nissan.
Yes, coming up to put a lap on Bajan. Although it'll be a little while before he hauls him in. And in fact, if the Nissan is up and running 100% again,
there's the gap.
A problem. Yes, there it is. It's about a third, half the length of the back straight, about 400 metres.
That's Crichton going through. Then, of course, the John Giddings, Bruce Stewart, Oxo Supercube car. And Crichton at this stage up to third on the road. Race leader still Jimmy Richards. Terry Shield and George Fury running second. Neville Crichton 41 seconds back in third place. But Jimmy still holds that very commanding lead at this stage. Fourth spot to Murray Carter. So there's Neville. He's probably got to grips with the car now. He's had a few laps in it. Picking the wheels up over the curbs as well. Team very successfully with Dick Johnson last year in the Nissan Mobile Series in New Zealand when Dick was campaigning the green Mustang.
62 laps remaining in the race. Must be getting pretty close to the BMW pit stop.
That or Frank's found a good way to wean a BMW. Bajan has picked up the pace again, but Crichton continues. Despite the problem he had on the back straight, Ken Bajan, he still runs 7th on the road. The man we're watching at the moment is Neville Crichton, car number 18. He's third. Why not check the positions on the Castrol scoreboard? Jimmy Richards is our race leader. Fury and Shield are second. Dick Johnson and Neville Crichton are third, followed by Brock and Parsons. Fifth spot, Perkins and Holm. Sixth is Murray Carter and Dennis Hawley. Seventh, Bajan and Bowkett will be following. Eighth is Giddings and Stewart in the Oxo Supercube Ford Sierra. Ninth, John Crook at the wheel, Neil Crompton. 10th spot, car number 7, Graham Cameron and Wayne Wilkinson. And we'll be back. Gentleman Jim is certainly shining.
Bad luck if there is something amiss with the Netcom car, Murray Carter, Dennis Hawley at the wheel at the moment, because they've done a terrific job to fight their way up to 6th place in the race, and it'd be bad luck for something to go wrong now. Not that they're getting close to the finish, not by a long chalk with 59 laps remaining.
Jim Richards would be wanting to stay out there just about as long as he possibly could, I would think. Wait and see what the weather does. It's going to make life a lot easier for Tony Longhurst if when he goes out of the pits he's on the right tyres, and if it does rain anymore it could require wets, and that would save them an extra pit stop if they had to put wets on it when it came in.
Oh, that was close. There's David Radcliffe, car number 58. Jim getting through there, but gee, it was tight. Larry Perkins has been able to hang on to his bumper after Jim disposed of him last time down at the end of the start-finishing straight.
I think the problem with this weather is it is not going to make up its mind what it wants to do. It's not going to bucket down. It's not going to fine up. It's just going to be persistent like this all afternoon. It'll drop in for a few minutes and then lift again and then come back when you least expect it.
Okay, Jimmy Richards, car number 1, JPS BMW. That gives you an overall view of the start-finishing straight here at Sandown. Denny Holm back behind the black BMW as they come down to the left-hander at the end of the straight. Jim going in here deep, very deep. Puts a lap on car number 28. In fact, I think it's probably wetter over this side of the circuit than it is down the start-finishing straight. But I think you're right, Richard. It's not going to be long before it's time in for change an idea of the tyres.
And he's got just around. Oh, and there's the Sierra.
Problems there for Neville. Got going again, whether or not he's had a half lose there. Just picked up the tail end of that as they come out of the corner. He was running very, very strongly. Third spot on the road behind Jim Richards, and of course the Fury and Shield, Peter Jackson, Nissan Skyline.
A little fuel hiccup there, Mike, for the Sierra. If he dives into the pits on this lap, we'll know that's the case.
Dulux, he's headed for the pits. It wouldn't be nice being out there with the track wet either on slicks. Try to get a hold of the ground.
I don't like standing in the shower on slicks, let alone on the racetrack. But this isn't raining yet, mate. You have to go a little harder than this before we can call it genuine rain. It was really only liquid sunshine we have in Victoria.
Not as much as Spa, perhaps. Still a little off-putting. No, car sounds great as it goes past our position above the grandstand here at Sandown. So Neville Crichton continues to hold down third on the road. I thought Neville liked a bit of wet weather driving. He and Johnson ran very, very hard in last year's Nissan Mobile 500.
Richards goes by our commentary position again, too. So he continues to hang out there with 57 laps remaining for him.
Well, they talk a lot about the engine management systems that are required to maintain a turbo engine in today's technology, but that's some pretty damn good engineering under the bonnet of that JPS BMW to squeeze that amount of fuel out of the tank. It augurs very well for their gaps at Bathurst, where you basically divide the race into 3 stops if you can, and they're certainly indicating that they can do that. And if the other hordes that are coming with them from Europe to back them up, it's going to be a very interesting race, and certainly no lay-down misere for any make that I can see.
Well, Frank Gardner's got the JPS BMW crew highly tuned, and anybody that doesn't salute when Frank walks in is in trouble. And if you get out to their operation at French's Forest in Sydney, it's simply amazing. It's just a great setup, and the workshop is absolute bliss. You could eat your lunch off the engine block or off the floor, spotless, and they really do run a very tight ship, and it shows.
And that's what you have to have if you want to be in a winning position in today's competition. Anything less is counterproductive.
Quite a few cars have dropped out, but maybe not as many as we thought at this stage. Still a big field out and circulating in difficult conditions. This light misty rain continuing to fall here at Sandown.
This is starting to get to be a bother. They won't be liking it on slicks now. The drivers will be thinking very carefully about making a move that would cause them to slip off the track. You can see Neville not taking any chances here through these S's, and that's the way you should be doing it. But it's now getting to the stage where they would seriously be thinking about rain tires.
The Castrol 500 scoreboard. Richards continues to lead. Fury and Shield run in second. Brock and Parsons. Then followed by Crichton and Johnson. 5th spot, Perkins and Holm. 6th on the road, Murray, Carter and Dennis Hawley. 7th, Giddings and Stewart in the Sierra. 8th spot is Bajan and Bowcat. 9th is Crook and Crompton. 10, Cameron and Wilkinson. We'll be back in a few moments.
Started one of those things personally I disagree with. I think America's on the moon, and the Russians are chasing them, and we have to turn our engines off for a pit stop. I think it's a little bit archaic myself, but it caused them a little trouble. The starter motors do get hot sitting very close to the big exhaust manifolds that sit there burning everything away, and I would suspect that they just had to rock it a bit to get it into gear, and then off she went.
Tony Longhurst at the wheel now, and on wet weather tyres too, Alan.
Yes, they took the perfect timing. He stayed out there as long as they could, and when Jim brought it in, obviously with about 1 litre in the tank, they took the stop advantage and threw on a set of Pirelli wets, and we all know how well Pirellis work in the rain.
Okay, let's replay for you the pit stop. Jimmy Richards goes into the pits as race leader Tony Longhurst standing by. Jim very quickly out of the car, helping Tony with his belts. Well-drilled JPS BMW crew. Pirellis go on the car. Everything seems to be running smoothly here.
Yes, the actual stop was 25 seconds once they dropped it, but then it wouldn't start.
Now they realise that something's wrong. You go, he's yelling at Tony.
And then all of a sudden, They get it fired. Jim stands by, pretty anxious about the whole thing after building up such a good lead. And Tony Longhurst comes back onto the racetrack and rejoins the race in second spot. Up there in front now, leading the pack is Terry Shiel in George Fury's number 30 car, and he's waltzing around on slicks.
Yes, he'll be really hurting now. There's enough water on the track for it to be quite dicey with slick tires on, and no different to people driving around the road with bald tires that encounter a rainy day. They're taking their lives into their own hands. The only reason we have grooves in our tires is to take care of the water on a rainy day, Mike. So Terry will be experiencing a tough time out there at the moment. He'll be praying for it to ease off so that a dry strip will develop from the traffic, but it doesn't appear to be doing that.
Well, what would you do at this stage if you were Fred Gibson? Would you be thinking about bringing Terry in, changing rubber and putting George back into the car?
Well, Fred can analyze the clouds easier than Terry can. Normally it's a conversation between the driver as to how well he thinks he can hang on to it. But I think that will be a decision for Freddie, and if he does bring you in, naturally they would put George back in it again.
Well, it's waltzing around there just a little.
They would have gained a little bit of breather with the bad pit stop from the JPS team, but when I say bad, they just lost 15 seconds needlessly. Nevertheless, they're going to be no match for Longhurst on the wet tires. That gap will be reducing quickly. 31 seconds at the moment between the number 30 lead car, Nissan Terry Shiel, and Tony Longhurst in the JPS BMW M3.
Well, he's hanging out there. I know George will be certainly willing him on. And Peter McKay is standing by with the man who has led this race well beyond the halfway mark, Jimmy Richards.
Well, it's Jim Richards' weather here at Sandown. After threatening to rain all day, it's now coming down at a reasonable rate, but just when things got interesting, Jim Richards, you got out of the car and put in co-driver Tony Longhurst.
Yes, well, we'd gone over halfway, so we planned on one stop, so naturally Tony can take it to the end. I'm glad it's raining, but I'd rather he was out there than me.
Did you do the right thing by him and put on some wet weather rubber?
Oh, yeah, no, we waited out long enough until we knew that the rain was going to stay, more or less, before we decided to pit. So I think the rain's here to stay till the end, so we put wet weather tyres and Tony will go to the end.
So everything's looking pretty good for you guys. The car's going well?
The car's was running faster at the end than it was at the start. Once we get rid of a little bit of our fuel and warm our tyres up to the right temperature, then we can start to lap fast. Early in the race we can't do that because we're carrying too much weight in fuel.
Jim Richards and Tony Longhurst won here 2 years ago, and now they look set to repeat that performance.
I think I'd agree with that, Peter McKay. Allan?
That's an interesting story, and one we know very well from our Mazda RX-7 days. It's quite interesting that the BMW weighs in at 960 kilos. We ran the RX-7 at 950. And Mick Webb used to measure out our petrol with eyedroppers, and we finished races with literally quarter of a litre in the tank. We had a fantastic reserve fuel system. We knew we could always do it, and the weight is very critical, and that's what we saw in the beginning of the race with Jim Richards looking statistically poor in 4th and 5th place, but as his fuel load decreased, he started to become a threat, and now here he is holding the lead with Tony Longhurst.
Well, Terry Shiel is still out there. Has Fred Gibson deduced that the rain might hang around until checkered flag time, do you think?
Well, he'd be looking at the skies and he'd be hoping for it. At the moment, they'll just be deducing their lap times. They've still got 38 seconds lead over over the BMW at the moment. And as long as that gap doesn't appear to be coming down at the speed of a Otis elevator, we're, I'm sure, in a position where he'll stay on the seat. The rooster tails are not so great at the moment. It's really, really only savage when you can't see the car in front of you for the amount of spray that's coming up. So in a straight line, the car will not be too dicey, and actually we can still see a bit of a dry patch where the traffic is wearing away the water. So although it's uncomfortable for Terry Shiel, he'll be hoping for this dry patch that we can just perceive at the moment to increase. And as we look at the gap between him and the BMW, as long as it sits there, then the wisest thing is for them to stay on the dry tires and hope for it to dry out more.
Shiel works the back straight. at Sandown, beneath the bridge. Becomes quite a handful from here through the infield area.
He has one advantage again, Michael, that having been out in the dry on that set of tires, they're nice and warm, and in effect they're acting like squeegees in their own right, even though they don't have the grooves in the pattern to help them with that dissipation factor.
The Nissan Gazelle, car number 60, Mark Scaife, handing over to Jarrett, leading their class by a very wide margin, and 15th outright in the Castrol 500 from Sandown today. Well organised pit stop from the Nissan team.
Not as quick, I don't think, as they would have liked that. But then again, as you say, they're leading their class by so far. They'd be feeling pretty comfortable. Getting a bit misty inside there.
Most of the Australian teams still have lug nuts, and one thing we'll see at the James Hardy 1000 is the European teams. There wouldn't be a European team with anything other than the single wheel nut, and if they jam on, it can take half a day to get the wheel off. That's a real danger. Over 300 foot-pounds of torque it takes to untighten the wheels and tighten them up again, but sometimes they come in with hot wheel nuts that won't break loose. I think honestly Terry Shield is suffering now. The gap is under 30 seconds between him and the JPS car. But as long as there's a slight dry path there where he can get some power down, I'm sure between him and chatting to Freddie on the two-way, they're reluctant to come in, no matter how uncomfortable it is.
So their big gamble, Allan, is in fact it's going to fine up, and they're going to be caught on dries.
The worst thing that'll happen, no matter what they do, they come in, they must lose 30 seconds to 40 seconds with the change.
Yep.
And vice versa, the BMW can stay out there, and even if it fines up, all he's going to do is chew a set of tires up and hopefully limp through to the finish. And if that was the case, the Nissan would be on dries as well. Rains as well that were also getting chewed up, and he'd have to stop again.
Exactly.
So if they stop, it could cost them the race, and I'm sure this is what management is thinking about in conjunction with their fine driver, to just stay out there. They're still in the lead. They are holding the lead, as narrow as it might be. And obviously, if they come in, it's the kiss of death for them. But this isn't really raining yet, Mike.
You keep saying that. I know it's different in Belgium.
Just thicker.
Well, I think maybe trying to deduce what's the weather is in fact going to do. It's lightened off around the circuit. Of course, the JPS team are going to be caught out there on wets, and here comes Terry Shield into the pit area. He'll hand over to George Fury.
This is the decision of the race. He'll either make it or break them.
Terry's trying to get the belts off as he comes down pit road.
Rain tires definitely going on. You can see a good healthy rain tire too. That's not an intermediate, so they're not taking any chances with a 50-50 bet. That's a genuine rain tire. These racing rains are extremely soft. Dunlop Engineering around the world have perfected a rain tire that is par excellence, and this car will move with George behind it, and he's no stranger to slippery conditions with all his rally experience behind him. I think he quite likes sliding around, Mike. He feels happier that he knows when the car is sliding, he's got it under control.
Well, he's off now, but
that was an excellent stop.
It was too. There's Jimmy Richards though. That's the gap. He's coming out of Castrol corner and heading up the back straight as George heads out of the pit area.
Well, if the conditions remain the same, then that's an extremely healthy lead. That's all he would need. The two drivers being par on course, equal on shots, as the golfers would say. But George is no mean operator in the wet, and once these tires get a bit of heat into them and he starts feeling confident and knows how far he can take the G-forces up through those corners, he will be pressuring Tony, and Tony will be watching his gap board like crazy.
About a third of a lap, in fact, is the margin between the top two cars now, with Jim Richards back in front on the track in JPS BMW number 1, and George Fury back behind the wheel of the Peter Jackson Nissan car number 30.
Tony Longhurst comes through the new section of racetrack, infield section as we call it.
A section that hasn't been terribly popular with a lot of drivers, Mike, and I don't think has been a huge success, with all respect to the designers of the course. It was aimed at Formula One material, and it hasn't panned out that well for touring cars.
Let's recap for you the positions on the Castrol scoreboard. Jimmy Richards, race leader, has taken the lead back. George Fury is in second spot. Peter Brock and David Parsons in third. They're the positions on the Castrol scoreboard. We'll be back. Network across Australia today. And that's David Parsons in 05, the Peter Brock Commodore. Presently placed third on the road behind Tony Longhurst and, of course, George Fury. Fury having completed the pit stop. Car handed to him by Terry Shield. Neville Crichton in Dick Johnson's Ford Sierra runs in fourth spot, clear of Larry Perkins, Ken Bajan, John Giddings, Murray Carter, the Crook-Crompton combination, Graham Cameron and Wayne Wilkinson. And at the moment, as Allan pointed out earlier, David Parsons is trying to find that dry line around Sandown, and the rain has stopped, so it might take maybe 10-15 laps before the circuit does dry out, and those running on slick tyres can make a bit of a charge. Those on wet weather rubber will certainly have to come in well before they shred their rubber. Still a long way to go in the race. This classic race for Group A touring cars. And of course things have been happening in Europe that might suggest things could be a little different if the powers of the sport go ahead. Allan Moffat has the story.
The popularity of touring car racing has always stemmed from the fact that you, the viewer, have been able to identify the cars we're racing. In fact, I'm sure there's a lot of you feel that the vehicle you're driving to work on Monday morning is exactly the same as what we're racing on Sunday. That's not quite the case, but in Europe at the moment there's a move afoot to change everything, and expensive changes. Our authorities would like to transplant the formula to a silhouette design. In other words, the car would ostensibly look the same, but the standard engine would be transplanted with a Formula One Grand Prix engine. That's a move that's got a lot of people in touring car racing extremely worried.
I think it's wrong for Australia, it's wrong for the world. I think they're trying to destroy Group A. I believe in a few more years Group A will get to the stage where it'll need some revisions done of the formula, but I can't see how Silhouette's going to work, and as far as Nissan is concerned, Australia and Nissan worldwide, they don't want to see a Silhouette in the current formula they're looking at doing in Europe now.
We don't see any reason to change this early. I didn't take the Bernie Eccleston thing seriously at first. I thought, oh, you can't be serious. Group A's just got off the ground. It's off and running. We've got World Championship races. Bathurst's going to be bigger than ever. And here's a guy coming along saying, sorry, it's all over. But they, over in Europe, they do take it serious.
I think the manufacturers have stuck an awful lot of money, time and effort into developing certain cars for Group A. And just to burn it up like that seems pretty fruitless as far as I'm concerned, and especially from my point of view, that you know, I've been involved in motor racing a long time, and we adopted here in Australia to run Group A because at that point in time it seemed the way to go. And now they're, after everyone here has spent an awful lot of money setting themselves up, they just want to disband it for some weird and wonderful formula we've had here for 100 years called Sports Sedan, is what we call it.
Well, basically, I think people should mind their own business. There are a lot of people that have been involved in Group A and manufacturers involved in Group A with a lot of input and a lot of backing to the formula. I think it's very poor form when somebody who sits in some office, some ivory tower somewhere, decides that he wants to downgrade that formula and promote another one that yet again he doesn't know anything about. This guy is a Formula One expert, and that's his area of expertise. I think he should stay there.
Random selection opinions from some of the leading drivers regarding a proposed silhouette touring car formula that has been put forward by the FOCA boss and FISA man, Bernie Eccleston. And I tell you what, if Bernie walked through the pits at Sandown and suggested it was going to happen, he'd be lynched from the back of the grandstand. That seems to be the feeling of a lot of manufacturers who obviously believe the car that they put out on the road that you're watching at the moment is based on production lines, and we're not going to fool anyone by putting a Formula 1 motor in a Nissan Skyline or a Formula 1 engine in a BMW. We all obviously understand that turbocharged Formula 1 motors come to an end very, very shortly. There's going to be a lot of Honda Formula 1s and Alphas and Brabhams particularly left. They want to stick them into touring cars. Well, Bernie can find another circus for that.
Yes, I think it's particularly cynical, Mike. He has a warehouse full of turbocharged engines and then feels that he should change a formula, which we are all deeply involved with.
At the moment, the pit stop for the Graham Crosby and Graham McRae Commodore. Good to see Cros back in Australia, and also Graham McRae. Graham's been doing a spot of kart racing, as I understand, this season. And Graham Crosby back in Australia. Campaigned the Australian Touring Car Championship last year. Went to Charlotte, North Carolina with Allan Grice and Bob James Foster's assault there earlier this season. And I guess the next major meeting for Graham to show how diversified he is, stepping off a bike into a car, will be the Australian 300 at Calder Park on November 29, which again will be bringing you as a 7 Sports exclusive when Richard Petty and all of the NASCAR's finest come to Australia for the big $1 million race. At the moment, though, the track is drying, Alan.
Yes, well,
now it's the JPS boys and Frank Gardner. They're in a little bit of a quandary about what to do.
The one thing about the rain tires, they will run in the dry. They just get a little bit mushy because they have extreme grip, which allows them to work well in the wet. If it dries out, of course, that grip starts getting beyond the point of the tire's capabilities to handle the car's G-forces. And in that respect, it'll only be a question of how many laps to go and really how dry it gets. But being the afternoon it has been, it can easily come down again, and I think they'll hang on. Certainly, the JPS and the Peter Jackson team are forced now to hang on to these wets as long as they can. And in fact, if it gets any drier than we can see at the moment, the drivers will start driving deliberately in the wet patches to keep the tires from shredding.
Well, there was a big wet patch there for Tony Longhurst, and we'll check out the Castrol 500 scoreboard and see that Tony is in the lead with George Fury holding down second place in the Nissan entry, followed by Peter Brock in third spot. Fourth is Neville Crichton, Dick Johnson in the Ford Sierra, then Larry Perkins and Denny Holm in position number 5. Sixth spot on the race at the moment, Kent Bajan and Graham Barquette. Seventh spot, John Giddings and Bruce Stewart in their Ford. Murray Carter and Dennis Hawley still hanging in there in 8th position. Crompton and Crook doing well at 9th, been there from the outset. And Graham Cameron and Wayne Wilkinson position number 10 with
100 from Sandown and retirement for Bruce Stewart. Bruce, of course, sharing the Oxo Supercube number 34 car with John Giddings this afternoon. They were running 7th on the road. He's just pulled the car in, it's quit the motor, and there's not too much they can do about it. They were running very, very strongly, came up through the pack, but their Castrol 500 is over as marshals give a hand just to move the car just a little more off the racetrack and hard up against the guardrail. In the meantime, Georgie Fury, car number 30, the Peter Jackson Skyline. George finding a bit of dry road at the moment, Alan, trying to see if he can pull up that gap on Tony Longhurst, who currently leads the race in the number 1 JPS BMW.
I think he's doing that, Mike. The gap exactly is 17 seconds. And if we're looking at a little bit of a tire war here between the Pirellis and the Dunlops, on paper it looks as if George is getting a better advantage under these conditions.
As you can see there, George was chasing the wet line down the front straight and heads into the left-hander. We saw the pit stop a few moments ago of the New Zealand Commodore, Graham Crosby, and Peter McKay is with his co-driver.
It's been a rushed preparation for the Kiwi Commodore team of Graham McRae and Graham Crosby. The motor car arrived in Australia only 3 days ago, and I guess that hurried preparation of Graham has been reflected in the performance today. It hasn't been a wonderful afternoon.
No,
really hasn't. I took off out of the pits after taking Graham Crosby's place in the car, only to find that the brake pedal went to the floor, and it did so for about 5 or 6 laps, so I was fairly slow. And then it rained, and the rain was such that we really had to go very, very slow. The car wouldn't steer into the corners, and we, with a locked diff, couldn't easily drive around the corner at all until I saw Peter Brock behind me and realised he had the same problems. I let him by and followed him for quite a while and thought the only thing to do to have any advantage was really to come in and put rain tyres on. So I did, and I only got to the end of the straightaway here when the wheel studs broke and the wheel collapsed. So we decided to call it a day.
You're, of course, best known in Australia for great exploits in a Formula 5000, but it seems now you're starting to revitalise your career, coming back into motorsport in a fairly convincing fashion in touring cars.
Well, I don't know if it's very convincing, but I'm certainly enjoying myself, and we hope to do better in the future. This is our first effort, really, and hopefully not only this will go well, but my drive at Indianapolis car up in the States will do well. Yeah, then I will be back.
All right, well, we'll see you at Bathurst then. Graham McRae, not a great day today, but better things ahead, perhaps.
Thank you, Peter. Neville Crichton, car number 18, the Shell Cosworth Sierra continues.
It didn't have a particularly good run yesterday, and I think having to work on it a lot of yesterday's practice and then come out cold today, it has, if anything else, not only run at the head of the field earlier this afternoon, but it's still running today is a credit to the preparation that's gone into it. They've worked very hard to get 2 cars to the start line, and this one is still running for them.
Gap between race leader Jim Richards or Tony Longhurst in the JPS BMW and George Fury in the Nissan was down to 7 seconds, but George was just balked going through Castrol corner by a slower car, so he's lost a little bit of that ground. Poor old Dick, number 17, attacked nobody today, son. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, well, the fans are keen anyway, and just almost as if to say, we should be heading to the pits maybe in the next 20 laps for dry rubber. The rain has started to swirl back in around the circuit again, Alan. Oh, you wouldn't call it rain, maybe
just a little bit more mist. Of that liquid sunshine. That's normal for Melbourne. We're tougher down here. We don't need that sunshine bright, heavy the way you have it up there north of us. We work harder down here. We don't want to be lazing around in the sun all the time, so we feel at home in these conditions.
Is that why you went somewhere to drive it for 9 hours instead?
There's Croaky Crichton, car number 18, the Shell Cosworth Sierra, running 4th on the racetrack at the moment. Yes. Tony Longhurst still leading it from Farmer George, David Parsons, and of course Neville Crichton.
Some big flames coming out of that car at the moment as it comes up the main straight. It's slowing.
It is, and Jim Richards
say they've got a problem for sure. Double clutching it, bringing her back on song, but I think the motor has just quit on him. And he's coasting into the top corner. Be out of the way of any traffic, fortunately.
Richards and Fury whipped past him there at the bottom of the straight.
Yes. No, he's trying to get it going. We can see some flames coming out of the exhaust pipe. Limping, but no, he's decided to head for safer territory, not be a problem to any other drivers. Good sportsmanship there.
Full face helmet, so in fact it's Greg Hansford, not Neville Crichton as I called. And the second of the Dick Johnson Ford Sierras bites the dust. Dick walks out. Neil Lowe, who was scheduled earlier today to split the driving in the number 18 car with Neville Crichton. No, at least after the race is over, they've got to go out and pick up the car and bring it back in.
Well, Mike, you know the entry list at Bathurst better than most. Sierras versus M3s, it's going to be a pretty even battle. If they take themselves out 1 for 1 down the line, there's going to be one black BMW, very, very compatible with the scenery up there, I think.
I would think so, and I certainly wouldn't discount the possibilities of the Commodores still having a bit of sway at the mountain.
Well, they've shown here today that they can certainly stay in the top 5, and that augurs well, but I think with another 5 to 10 rockets arriving from Europe, that their statistical position in the early half of the James Hardy 1000 may not be too brilliant.
Just look at this, coming up past the pits. There's car number 1, Tony Longhurst, and just look who sits in behind him. Farmer Fury, the Talmalmo Tiger. Is it on for young and old?
Oh, we got a race here now.
We certainly have. They move on to the start-finishing straight. Crowd alive now. Jimmy Richards, number 1 car with Tony Longhurst at the wheel. George Fury down the inside of the racetrack as they head down, and George is going to take him on under brakes. This will be keen. And George does it too. Straight down on the inside. Floats it out nicely, and George Fury for Peter Jackson Nissan Racing goes back into the lead in the Castrol 500.
The Nissan's about 80 kilos heavier than the BMW, Mike, and under rainy conditions, a little bit of weight doesn't go astray. But I think what we're witnessing there is George was able on the dry parts, on the fast part of the circuit, to get that turbocharged power down, and he's just giving Tony a bit of a hiding with his under bonnet performance, not to take anything away from his driving style.
We also noticed that Greg Hansford had fired up the number 1, or 18 rather, Cosworth Sierra. He's trying to limp back to the pits at the moment, heading up the back straight, so we'll see whether he can get it back in or what problem they have. Peter McKay is in the pits and be able to report on that as the car comes into pit lane.
Well, I think it's a shame that for years at Bathurst, or at least 15 years ago, we woke up that turning the engines off was the most dangerous aspect of a pit stop, and now we're back to turning them off again. And I believe what potentially happened at the last Shell pit stop was the heat soak that comes out of the turbocharger, which is absolutely enormous in the 500 to 600 degree area, has boiled the fuel. Greg's got in it, gone out, and the engine's hiccuped. Perhaps by cooling it down slowly, getting back to the pits, whatever tricks they've got up their sleeve, they may be able to fire it up again. But turning the engines off is not good news, and here's another example of it.
Well, he's getting back there, but slowly, and of course losing valuable time, and it's going to be, well, a big double disappointment the way things are shaping for Dick Johnson and his crew this afternoon here at Sandown. But no disappointment for Fred Gibson and the Peter Jackson Nissan crew.
No, they took a chance with that tire change, and they proved to be a good one.
And the thing here is Farmer George just shakes it down on the inside. He's taking them all under brakes at the end of the front straight, so things looking good, and he's chasing the wet part of the road too, keeping in mind that George is also on wet rubber, and the way the weather is at the moment, it might well stay that way until the end of the race.
Top 3 cars running, I was going to say nose to tail, but George has moved away from them pretty quickly there, having just put a lap on Peter Brock. And Tony Longhurst does the same.
Well, the Brock car's still on slicks, Gary, and I think hurting a little bit. They're certainly disadvantaged under these conditions, but they're praying for that dry track to open up for them.
Georgie Fury, car number 30, comes off the back straight. Yes, sirree, the little farmer is back in front. He leads from Jimmy Richards. Brock and Parsons are 3rd. Larry Perkins, Denny Holm 4th. Ken Bajan and Bowkett 5th in the Nissan. 6th spot now held down by John Crook and Neil Crompton. 7th, Murray Carter and Dennis Hawley in the Nissan. 8th is Graham Cameron and Wayne Wilkinson in the Holden Commodore. 9th is Bill O'Brien and Brian Sampson in the Everlast Holden. And 10th, Trevor Crowe and James Keogh in the BMW. And we're going to be back. 89, the 87 Castrol 500 from Sandown International Raceway. 4th on the race at the moment. 1 lap down on the race leaders. Larry Perkins and Denny Holm. Larry Perkins, of course, a man who we detailed earlier in today's telecast, one of the greatly experienced runners in this afternoon's Castrol 500. His co-driver, of course, is a man who hardly needs any introduction to the world of motorsport. He comes to us all the way from Auckland, Denny Holm, 51 years of age, and a nice guy.
51-year-old Denny is the most internationally accredited driver in today's field. His first taste of motorsport was a gymkhana at Ardmore in New Zealand 30 years ago. He entered Formula 1 racing in '63 and was world champion in '67. Denny Holm has driven just about everything on 4 wheels during his career. 8 Formula 1 victories, the Can-Am Cup for sports cars in 68 and 70, and the British Tourist Trophy 21 years apart. He returned to Europe last year for the International Touring Car Championship and received a standing ovation when he and Jeff Allan teamed to win the TT in the white Estel Rover at Silverstone. From Invercargill to Indianapolis, Spa to Sandown, there's not a driver more experienced in today's field than Aucklander Denny Hulme.
And the race isn't over for Denny Hulme and Larry Perkins, fourth on the racetrack. Only one lap down, still looking good. Let's go to the pits and Peter McKay.
About 5 minutes ago, I walked up along pit lane here and spoke to Neil Lowe, the development engineer for the Dick Johnson Shell team. I said, how are things going? And Neil said, well, things are going pretty well. And at that moment, there was a flash of flame from the exhaust pipe of the Sierra, and that's it.
Yeah, well, the poor old engine's done that much work. It's actually the engine we use on the dyno. It's done 50-odd hours on the dyno and 200 laps at surface. But obviously, some of the fuel we put in it hasn't been quite up to scratch, so it looks as though it's sort of done that again.
When the day started, I guess we expected that if the Sierra was going to have trouble, it might be the driveline, but it hasn't been the driveline.
No, that's been fine.
The day has ended early for you guys, but has it been a learning process? Have you come away from today with anything to do, anything to change?
Yeah, well, I think we'll sort of regroup and have a bit of a look as soon as we get home. The guys will be leaving, straight away, and we'll put a few engines together and do a couple of other slight adjustments to the car, ready to go to Bathurst.
It hasn't been a great day. Yesterday was your day, Dick, but we've got 3 weeks to go to Bathurst, and by then hopefully the Dick Johnson Shell team will have everything back together and a repeat of 81.
Thank you, Peter McKay. I tell you what, though, he's got some pretty strong competition coming in the form of the Eggenberger Texaco team from Europe, and also Andy Rouse, Thierry Tassin, who of course are coming for Bathurst. So unless they get their act together for Bathurst, you could almost park it, because these guys that are coming out with their Sierras regroup after each race, and they are incredibly fast. I'm sure Alan Moffat would agree.
I think people would be interested to know that the Eggenberger team, based in Switzerland, are the official Ford factory team. They have the contract from Ford of Europe to help develop the Sierra. Andy Rouse Engineering is the Ford of Britain representative in the World Touring Car Championship, and has been on the pace with the Eggenberger cars throughout their developments. They're real flyers, and they have to be, because the competition from the rest of the field is absolutely savage. I think the most exciting aspect about the James Hardy 1000 this year is that there will be so many good cars, Mike, that are going to be capable of doing the job. And the way the Europeans operate is foot to the floor and to hell with all the other consequences. So any Australian team that isn't prepared doesn't need to bother going.
That's true. They're not really into nursing cars home in Europe for the World Touring Car. It is really a case of attack the curbs, and just, if the car breaks, they don't care if it breaks on lap 22 or lap 192.
That's exactly right.
Up the front of the field here at Sandown, we're looking at Glenn Seaton at the moment, but it's teammate George Fury who holds the race lead and is opening up quite a gap now over Tony Longhurst at 8-9 seconds nearly. He's done that in pretty short order.
At this time of the race, Gary, that's the length of a freight train. You only worry about them when they're kissing your door handles. 8 seconds is a very comfortable gap, but not one that can be sneezed at. Naturally, George only has to drop a wheel off the circuit, get a little bit untidy, miss a gear change, and Tony will be on him like a flash. But that's a fairly commanding gap between two professional drivers.
Well, there'll be no kissing door handles or any other components in this man's army this afternoon, because George is, as I said, clearing out. Glenn Seaton, glad to be out back on the track, I think. Of course, up there and dueling, a tremendous duel between he and Dick Johnson early in the race. But boy, that early pace certainly has taken its toll on some of the early front runners.
Well, I think it's also worth mentioning that you don't luck into a lead position. This car was driven hard at the beginning of the race by Glenn Seaton, as you've just mentioned, Gary, and it's the the aspect that the car has run hard all day.
In the pits.
The position. Here's the 06.
Yep, Crompton back in the car. Neil Crompton getting back in the car to relieve John Crook. This car, the second of the dealer team Commodores, in 6th position on the racetrack, and that is a very commendable effort indeed.
This is the car that Peter and I co-drove at Bathurst last year. It's still a great car. Slightly modified in practice last year, but
having a bit of trouble there.
Yes, the trouble there is the driver can't see that buckle. It's the if we've got any inventors watching this afternoon, design us a pop-off button that all we have to do is hit one button to get these seat belts on. That problem has caused a lengthy pit stop for many a team. They still haven't got it in.
I might have to send Neil's mum and dad down to do up his buttons.
He'll remember this one. They won't want to do that again. There we go. Well, he'll be fired up now.
Oh, will he what?
Yes, here we go.
Go straight into
Are we going to get a wave? Let's watch.
I don't think so.
If he doesn't wave, we'll reprimand him after the event. Coming out of the pit lane. Yes.
Still a long way to go.
Neil, you didn't wave, honestly.
He hasn't done a bad job, though, Alan, just the same.
I think for a fellow that has wanted to be a race driver as long as he has, Mike, and not got right into the heart of it, the opportunity Peter Brock has given him, he's responded extremely well and has done himself great credit. He concentrates on what aspect of his career he wants to develop now, and that's all he'll have to do.
On the Castrol scoreboard, the Friendly Farmer leads it. Jimmy Richards runs second with Tony Longhurst, Larry Perkins and Homer third. Then the Brock Parsons combo, fifth, Bajan and Bowkett in the Nissan. Sixth spot, Crook and Crompton. They might have dropped a spot there. Cameron and Wilkin.
They haven't quite got the car developed to the stage where they can match it with the big guns, so they've been content just to sit in behind the pack and do the best job they can, and they've done it pretty well.
I was impressed with the way they ran recently at Oran Park, and yet another team. Oops, there's trouble for the K Grand Car pulling off the Commodore on the approach now to Castrol Corner. There wasn't too much of a dry line there. He's taken a...
Wasn't too much of a line in his mind when he felt the car dying under his foot too. He could have got a little on the inside there where he wouldn't have been so much danger to the rest of the field.
Oops, what do we got here? Looks like one of the BMWs. Number 3, that would be Finau. And Ludwig Finau going backwards across the grass has missed the sand trap there. How lucky was he not to back into the sand trap? Looks like he's going to try and pick it up and carry on.
He might have missed the sand trap. I don't think he missed Trevor Crowe.
No.
Oops. Goodness me.
It's an indication of how fragile the Group A cars are, Mike. Without the big flares to protect the wheels that we used to have many years ago, the slightest touch and you can be in a lot of trouble with your wheels, and that one got ripped right off the rim.
Well, here he's trying to make it back to the pits, Trevor Crowe. Doesn't want to... When you're hot, you're hot. But it's got to be on the wheel to work.
Looks like Jim Keogh, is it?
No, I think, yes, I think you're right, Wilco.
Trying to head back to the pit, and important for them because they're in 8th place at the time. And they were involved just seconds before in that coming together with the number 3 JPS BMW. And then maybe this was a result of that incident.
Going through there, as you can see, the black BMW, just ahead of it is Georgie Fury in car number 30. Allan, the way the track is drying just a little, this could go down to a very quick pit stop with some slicks.
Yes, it could be a very long 30 laps to go with that amount of rain. I'd be worried at this stage, although the gap between the two is sitting relatively stable, and I doubt whether George would dart in until he felt there was any difficulty. If anyone's going to roar in, I think it might be Tony to say, look, I'm not getting anywhere with these rain tires. I can use slicks, but of course he has to throw away 30 to 40 seconds to do that. It's an interesting situation still here, and one that the drivers hate. And quite honestly, if it's going to rain, you want it to be raining. You want the windscreen wipers going on full bore, and you want full wet tires. And from a driver's point of view, you hardly notice the difference in the way the car is handling. It's these halfway in and halfway out situations that drive you crazy and, of course, tear up the tires.
Tony Longhurst, you just saw going out of view in front of him, the number 30 Nissan Skyline. The gap is closing up, though. Longhurst determined not to let George slip away from him. Third place in the race now being held down by Larry Perkins and Denny Hulme. Yeah, the top two.
Well, what's holding George back at the moment is the rain tires. He's got the power and the performance actually to be a little bit further ahead of this BMW than he is at the moment. But the rain tires on the dry surface are starting to get extremely hot and bothered. And as such, he can't get the performance he wants. As such, Longhurst with the lighter car is having an easier time of it. But they'll play cat and mouse with one another here for another 10 laps at least, but if it continues to drive, I suspect both teams will roar in for slicks. Dunlop, Pirelli.
Well, I don't think it's going to be too long before Tony is sitting right on the bumper of George Fury. Now,
once the tires get extremely mushy, Mike, they turn to marshmallow. That's the feeling that George will be having at the moment, now that they're getting hot and wobbly. And naturally, he can't throw the car around the way he needs to get the performance, and that's why we see Tony sneaking up on him. Although Tony doing an excellent job, obviously preserving his tires that little bit better.
Just show the nose down here on the inside.
Now there's nothing in it now.
No, that's up to George Fury to cover all of the racetrack, or then to decide whether to stay out there or come in and try and get onto slicks for the sprint. There is a very distinct dry line all the way around Sandown. And I'll tell you what, Tony will be going for it. Make no mistake, he'll pump the nose up there on the inside of the number 30.
If he does pass him, Mike, George must come in instantly. He can't let one lap go by.
Well, it's fairly obvious he's not going to be able to hold him off much longer, so it's inevitable that he must pit if the tyres have gone. And then have Tony face the problem all by himself. Aha!
The master's waiting.
Yes. George is obviously going into the pits, and who knows, maybe we could well have Tony Longhurst go in at the same time if Richards is ready. George floats it out, yes.
Going in.
They're both coming in.
Oh, they're both, what fantastic shot. We got enough cameras.
Yes, we have. They come down. Tony and the JPS team have the top pit bay. Here they come. That'll be Jim into the car and George Fury for a quick set of tyres. Get the slicks on. Off come the wet weather rubber, on go the slicks. See who can make it out of the pits. It really requires the Peter Jackson Nissan team to get out ahead. They're just about ready to go.
20 seconds.
And I heard a whistle go, so maybe Fury's coming as well.
23, 25.
And here they come. Fury's beaten him out of the pits.
I think the starter motor caper on the BMW again hurt them getting it started. They actually finished the stop in just a few seconds over 20. But here we go, line ball.
Boy, is this race set for a ding-dong finish.
Oh, that's team management at its best, Michael. That's an exceptionally good demonstration of two top managers and drivers thinking and knowing what it's all about.
Now the idea is to get some of the slow cars onto the wet line and keep the fast cars on the dry line.
We almost need a supersonic horn at the moment that says, could you please pull over? I'm on faster tires.
Well, here comes Farmer George from Tal Malmo, car number 30, the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline.
Well, we know he's warmed up. Jim will take maybe just a quarter or maybe half a lap just to get into gear himself and mentally hyped up. George had the advantage over him there. And just a quicker run out of the pit lane. That could be the end of it. All it needs to do now in about another 10 laps is rain again. And then we'll see.
But as Allan said, it's not real rain in Victoria. Castrol 500 scoreboard. The Farmer back in front, hoeing into them too. Richards runs in second. Larry Perkins is third. Peter Brock fourth. Fifth is Ken Page and Bowkett in the Nissan. Sixth spot, Murray Carter and Hawley. Seventh is Neil Crompton and John Crook. Eighth, Posse, Graham Cameron and Wayne Wilkinson. Ninth, Bill O'Brien and Brian Sampson. And Ram still opening that gap up to the top of the hill. The Nissan is very quick down through the infield loop on the course. And the other good news is that Peter Brock has been able to storm up to third, just passing Larry Perkins. And I tell you what, he's not too far off the back of the BMW.
No, certainly not. And There's, oops. Have another go at him. Oh, I don't know about that. Oh, Jim Smart.
Frank does know when there's a camera around.
Yeah, so he's in good humour, and there are enough laps left in the race for the complexion to change yet again. Don't you worry about that. We're getting set for a grandstand finish here with George Fury leading at the moment from Jim Richards back in the JPS BMW number 1, and Peter Brock in 4th spot ahead of Larry Perkins.
There's Mark Scaife and the Nissan Gazelle still leading the small car class, and position 13 outright in the field for the Castrol 500 this afternoon.
Slight delay there, but now they're set and ready to go again. 0-5, Peter Brock in 3rd place, and he was relegated to 4th for a time there by Larry Perkins, slipped by him again, and the hometown crowd here at Sandown really went berserk. This man is just so popular. In fact, a measure of Brock, although looks like Bajan, was it? Had a slight mishap there, half spun the car, but got it back under control again. Peter Brock, measure of the man's popularity. You know, the Sydney Sun newspaper are running a competition in conjunction with the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst, and they're giving away 2 gold passes each day for the 21 days leading up to Bathurst for people to go to the big race, and each of the 15 winners get a key, one of which will fit a Brock Commodore, so the ultimate winner will get the car. The first 4 days they had 200,000 entries, and the competition's still got 2.5 weeks to run. It is unbelievable. That's a measure of Peter Brock's popularity with motor racing fans in Australia. 200,000 entries in 4 days.
They'd have some sort of sponsorship from the post office, wouldn't they, for that as well?
The Sydney Sun have had to go out and rent an extra building, I think, to stack the letters in.
Peter Brock, 0-5, actually gaining ground on the Jim Richards BMW, but keeping in mind that the 0-5 car is down 1 lap. We have George Fury and Jim Richards on the same lap, 1 lap down is Peter Brock, but he's been picking up the tail of the BMW with consummate ease the last 3 laps. Trying to unlap himself. This will give Brock a lot of heart as well as he goes to Bathurst.
Certainly a different complexion, isn't there, about the mobile dealer team crew now. Brock, of course, still at the helm, but the driver lineup has certainly changed. Young Dave Parsons, who drove for Brock a couple of years back, didn't he? Back in the team now, and of course we've got John Crook joining forces with Neil Crompton for this particular race.
But that's going to change at Bathurst.
Change again, yeah.
When Neil steps back with the 7 Sport crew for Bathurst, and then jumps Peter McLeod. Here's Brocky coming up behind the Dulux Auto Colour BMW. Up, back to normal. Arm out the window, out of my way, said. I was going to say at Oran Park only a few weeks ago. That's the first time for ages I've seen Brock with the arm on the window. He's been far too busy all season trying to fend off Cosworth Sierras and BMW M3s. But the car, the VL, running very, very nicely indeed. And there's Brock's team in the pits, following the boss's progress in the mobile Commodore.
Well, the impressive thing about Brock in this race has been the reliability of the car. He had a lot of ill luck over the last season or two to keep the cars competitive, but with Bathurst looming, there's something, I don't know, magic comes over Peter Brock whenever Bathurst looms on the horizon, and he's certainly got the whole team wound up, and certainly got the cars wound up for yet another assault on Mount Panorama, and he's making his presence felt here at Sandown this afternoon.
Well, if you listen to all the scuttlebutt, the press rumours down here for the last 3 days, they'll have you believing that Brocky will be in a BMW or a Ford or something else. Here's car number 3, the second of the JPS BMWs, has just pitted. Ludwig Finauer behind the wheel now. Give you in mind that he had a lose down in this turn only about 10 or 12 laps ago. It's position number 11 in the field. So they've come back through the pack. They were up running 15th for most of the race, and usually Ludwig and Robbie Francevic one would have expected to have run in the top 10 all day. They've got there, but it's taken a long time to get there.
24 laps remaining in the Castrol 500 for 1987, and still a long way to go.
Well, this is always a fascinating race because with Bathurst only 3 weeks away, it gives the local teams an opportunity to go enduro racing, set their cars up. This year, of course, is a little different to any other year because they've only had themselves to race. There's a whole new ball game coming from out of town, the Touring Car International Circus for the round of the World Touring Car title at Bathurst, the James Hardy 1000, and a week later, of course, the 500k race at Calder Park here in Melbourne, both of which are rounds of World Touring Car, both exclusive to the 7 network. The young Ludwig Finauer continues. Time to check out the scoreboard. The Farmer leads. The Kiwi is second. Brocky is third. Larry Perkins and Holm fourth. Bagent and Bowkett run fifth on the road. Sixth, Neil Crompton and John Crook. Seventh spot, Murray Carter and Dennis Hawley. They've been at it all
Up
day.
the little BMW a bit more efficiently than George can pull the Nissan up.
Here comes
Here's a
Fury.
dive. Nope, not quite.
Fates into the outside.
George is a very sporting driver, always has been, but there's no obligation for him to pull over and let Jim go by. Jim's got to do it in a efficient manner, and of course, Jim being the gentleman he always has been, he's not going to nudge George out of the way.
Here's Jimmy Richards.
I can remember being in positions like this, Michael, where I spent more time with my eyes on the rearview mirror fending off the bloke that was going to torpedo me than I could concentrate on getting away.
They come up into the right-hander, swing back across now to the left, past the pits. Some lap cars here just to make it more interesting, and Fury tries to gun the Nissan Skyline. As they come down the straight, Richards is sitting in his draft now. Will he make the run on the inside under brakes? He's working across to the inside of the racetrack. Castrol 500 is up for grabs for 87. Richards floats it in. Uses a bit of the curve as well and is really working hard on Georgie Fury.
Yes, George is definitely holding him up at this stage, but again, it's not up to him to pull over and allow Jim to walk by.
Okay, they work their way out of Castrol Quarter, up Motorcraft Hill now. Fury down the outside of the BMW 635, and down the inside comes Jimmy Richards. See if Richards goes for a late charge under brakes beneath the bridge.
Not quite.
Not quite this time. It's wheel-to-wheel stuff, though. Counting down with about 18 laps to go in the 87 Castrol 500. Small car fight to the finish.
We've got every lap the BMW getting faster, as Jim's indicated earlier, with the fuel load decreasing each lap. His performance is going up proportionately. I'm surprised George isn't actually holding him off a little bit more efficiently, but this car's had a hard 500k or 450 odd at this stage, and George could be nursing something. We don't know all those facts, of course, but he's doing an excellent job of holding off Jim Richards at the moment.
Jim will make a pounce, I have no doubt about that, under brakes at either the end of the front straight here. He's trying to set it up, sitting in the draft here as Fury works across to the inside edge of the track. Grandstand crowd stand up. They're going to see whether Richards can do it down the outside, side by side, door handle to door handle, across the strike. Coming up on the slower Mustang, who waves Fury across on the inside, and Fury says, well, I'll have a slice of that action, and Jim goes through with him too. This is great stuff.
That's real racing.
Yes, sir.
This is real Group A racing, and this is just how good it can be. And this is what some heroes away from our shores would like to put an end to.
Alrighty, the Isuzu gets the blow-by on the outside as these two work the Motorcraft Hill again. And even from this angle, you can see George with the eye just cocked up at the mirror to see where, in fact, Richards is coming from. It's down the outside. He won't do much about that. He'll try and just set him up here for the turn. He's got plenty of laps on his side, and he is really worrying George Fury.
And George is now actually resorting to defensive driving. He's holding the inside of the corner, and if Jim's going to make a move, he's got to go out into the wet with a passing maneuver. Still not probably the safest of activities at the moment, but George only has to miss a gear change or get a little flustered, which he does very infrequently.
There's Freddie Gibson.
Not laughing.
Well, he's always got a smile.
Yeah, but he's a pro.
Saying, golly, where did that car come from?
He knows it's not over until the flag goes down.
You couldn't have picked two more determined drivers to fight out the closing stages of an enduro race than Georgie Fury and Jimmy Richards. Enormously experienced drivers, can run wheel to wheel.
With anybody in the world, we might add, Mike.
Yes. They sweep by the pits again. Fury trying to get a little break on Jim Richards if he can. Here they come down the straight. Grandstand crowd again. Stan waiting to see whether Richards will float it back on the inside under brakes and try and take Fury. I think he will. No. George covers rather defensively into the left-hander.
Turbo power still helping him in a straight line. Jim's got to work a little harder for every ounce of performance he's getting out of his car. But that's what racing's all about.
Of course. Says it all, doesn't it? Looks like he's won the lottery. That's Frank Gardner, T-Boss for JPS BMW. Up the back straight this time. There's Fury. Gap opens just a touch. They floated down from the top of the hill. We've got some traffic here to contend with. To the right-hander. Perhaps George couldn't have struck these cars at the worst part of the circuit. If it was the straight, you go straight past them. Here he is caught in amongst them.
Pit straight.
Yeah, but he'll get the break between these two, and Richards will follow all the way. He'll duck down here on the inside. Sorry about the guy on the yellow Commodore, but Jim gave him racing room as well, so did George. Coming up now on the Bill O'Brien Everlast Batteries Commodore. Running 12 on the road at the moment. And as they fling out of there, Brian Sampson, I believe, at the wheel of the Everlast Commodore at the moment. And he... Brian. Oh.
This one cost George.
That cost George severely.
Yep.
And he's trying to get it back on the pace. The crowd has gone wild as here they come down the straight. This race is going all the way to the wire. Richards pulls up on the outside this time of George Fury. Can he do it? Fury will keep him wide as they float it down into the next turn. No, Jim's going to have to do this one again.
George Fury is earning his annual salary here in one afternoon. Freddie, if you're listening, I think it's time to be talking about raises. George is doing a fabulous job for you here.
It was a great pressure recovery, that one. He really was affected by Sampson. Frank thought it was all over that time when they came down the straight, and his boy was back in front. But this time they've got to work the back straight, and here comes Jim Richards on the inside if he's going to do it. That's where it'll be. Onto the brakes earlier is George Fury. Jim just lets him know.
Yes, he's certainly starting to try and rattle George as much as possible. He also knows they...
Thought about it. It was still wet though, wasn't it?
Yes.
As far as both these boys are concerned, the track's really only one car wide because the water either side of the dry line means that there's no way that Jim can outbrake him into a corner. If he gets on the inside, he gets on the wet stuff, and of course he's got no grip then.
It'll be all over, certainly.
Great tactical race by two very professional Australian touring car teams. JPS, Team BMW and Peter Jackson Nissan Racing. This is what the spectators have come out to expect today, a close, hard race under threatening skies, and they've had 4 seasons in one afternoon, and a fantastic race. See whether or not Jim can get on even racing terms with Fury as they come down the start-finishing line.
I think what we're witnessing here as well, Mike, is we're looking at engine development from two teams that have excelled in Australia. The Gibson team have worked hard from the very beginning on the turbocharged engine, and Frank Gardner's team do their own engines, no doubt with a lot of help from the German engineers in the first place, but nevertheless, it's the people that put it together on the workshop floor that count. Still looking at him, and you have to finish to win any race. And the fact that these two teams can be fighting as savagely as they are here with just on 15 odd laps to go is a credit to all the fellows and the management of both companies.
Well, they're both on the dry racing line. Richards goes for the outside run on George Fury as they come up Motorcraft Hill. Fury hangs down on the inside. He wants to lie for the turn. And Jim is going to have to either coast in on the outside and try and hold his place. No, he can't do that because that's still wet out there. Little tap. Come on, George, get on with it. You're holding me up.
You must get him on the inside, Mike. And unless George deliberately or otherwise allows that real estate to open up, Jim is going to be worried about taking a big chance on the outside.
I can still recall a round of the Aussie Touring Car Championship at Sydney's Amaroo Park when Jim pulled an outside pass, the most incredible pass around Dick Johnson on a corner that was an inside turn, went straight round the outside of him. So the only thing that prevents him doing it here is the fact there's a bit of wet road.
I'm sure.
Now to look at that view, you'd swore blind that George had turned up the turbo boost up, and it looks like the Mercedes is going to, no, he stays out of off the racing line. Makes it a bit easier.
It's a pity not to see the Mercedes in with a greater force. They have a great little car. It's a good handling car, but an engine that wasn't developed into turbocharged form and just too heavy to cut the mustard in Group A at the moment. I wouldn't want to be around if they got serious about putting a V8 in that body shell.
Heading up to Castrol Corner again. With 15 laps remaining, the dry line still remains. As they come out of the turn, they work their way up Motorcraft Hill. Fury has a little look in the mirror.
He's got a bit of an edge on him this lap.
Got that little gap opening up, but they're running up into some track. 05. Peter Brock has found the sand trap at Sandown.
He's found the end of the race, Michael. That's the end of it. He'll never get out of there.
Was running.
Take a Sherman tank to pull that Commodore out of there now.
Yep. Was running third on the road. The crowd having a big razz. Marshall's trying, but I tell you what, he's absolutely buried it. So the race is over for Peter Brock. He finishes in the bunker. They're not going to move that. And they were running third behind George Fury and Jimmy Richards. They sweep out of the turn down past the pits. We'll see if George can open that little gap that he had there a while ago on Jimmy Richards.
He seems to be doing it ever so slowly, Michael, and gaining advantages in the traffic. Jim was having to throw the car around a bit more to stay with George, and he may have hurt his tires.
Here's where Peter Brock happened. He got it around sideways at the end of the start-finishing straight. And the sand trap that claimed Don Smith yesterday in the Oxo Supercube gets one more victim as Brocky goes off across the grass. No control over where it's going there, and the slam front end is jammed in the sand. Almost. Gets her up on 2. Down she comes. Brocky exits the Castrol 500. This man leads it, car number 30, with Richards closer than ever.
He won't go away. George is saying, what do I have to do to get rid of this pest?
Well, he's getting stronger as they head up the hill. We might see a challenge on. I'll be saying that for something like about 10 or 12 laps. They've certainly had that challenge, but George has been able to answer everything that Jim's thrown at him so far. He's been aided certainly by wet road to the right and wet road to the left and one dry line. Coming out of that turn, there's Brocky, the general, marching across the sand.
Without his golf clubs.
Bad luck indeed for Peter Brock. You'll have some consolation that Neil Crompton is still out there running in the second car. Running 5th, would you believe? Oh, the kid could be in for a quid.
Well, for an apprentice, he's doing well.
And I tell you what, who is trying hard, awfully hard, is Jimmy Richards. If he can just find a little opening here on George Fury.
A lot of prestige at stake here. The Castrol 500, traditional lead up to the James Hardy 1000, second only to the James Hardy 1000 in prestige and in prize money. $25,000 at stake here. That's real money.
That's a lot of hay for a farmer.
And we've got two competing cigarette companies.
And Murray Carter, Dennis Hawley in for a quick pit stop. The Netcom Nissan Skyline. That was a very smart stop for a couple of drops of gas over the curbs again.
Well, Jim's not going to go away, but by the same token, George is not weakening. Nissan rear suspension floating around there. You can see it much more demonstrably than the more solid rear end that the BMW employs. I'm sure that takes a bit of getting used to, but George, having had many seasons with Nissan and Peter Jackson, knows exactly how far he can throw that rear end around.
Let's recap them on the scoreboard. Fury still leads it just from Jimmy Richards. Perkins is 3rd, Bajan 4th, Crompton, the kid, is in 5th spot. 6th is Murray Carter, 7th Graham Cameron, 8th Kieran Willis, 9th Bill O'Brien. So the race for Jim Richards, the Castrol 500, has gone.
Yes, I think you'll find that he is going to come back out on the track. It's not terminal, whatever it is, but
so George Fury in the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline Turbo, who was under enormous pressure from gentleman Jim. 0.5. Big cheer going up from the crowd here at Sandown. They managed to debunker the Commodore. 10 laps to go in the classic Aussie race.
Yes, well, that'll promote Larry Perkins into 2nd place now. So Brock made his exit into the bunker, moved Perkins up a spot. Jim Richards made his unscheduled stop in the pits just a few moments ago, as we saw, moves Perkins up another spot. Richards is back out on the track. Has just passed our commentary position on the main straight. There he is.
Is warming up to racing speed as Jim. So he gets going again. But that has certainly cost him the Castrol 500. A race that mid-stages you would have sworn blind that he had absolutely parcelled up.
And I think I promoted Larry Perkins a little too quickly. I don't think that he went by there while Richards was in the pits, but I think he's going to get by him anyway.
And they've got problems with the BMW because he's allowed another one of the other cars just through on the inside. I'd say that they are there to try and just finish and pick up a placing, just limping around the circuit. When I say limping, I really mean limping.
It's going to be 10 very long laps at that pace. Oh, desperately bad luck for the JPS crew.
And with 9 laps to go. So Jim just floats it around the circuit, puts Fury in front. 2nd spot held down by Larry Perkins and Denny Holm. 3rd place at this stage. We'll check it out on the Castrol scoreboard. 3rd, Jimmy Richards and Tony Longhurst. 4th is Ken Bajan and Graham Bowkett. 5th spot, Neil Crompton and John Crook. 6th spot, Murray Carter and Dennis Hawley. 7th, Kieran Willis and Philip Henley in the Nissan. 8th, Cameron and Wilkerson in the number 11. Sweeping out through the infield section, Larry Perkins. So things looking pretty good for a Commodore runner-up spot today for Larry Perkins. I expected, as I said to Gary early in the telecast, Larry to qualify a bit stronger than he did. Larry does like to be around at the business end of the arrangement. That's when they start hanging out checkered flags and a lot of prize money.
Yeah, that's right. And the way it's shaping up, all the top 5 now on the scoreboard. We've got 3 Nissans and 2 Commodores. So it's goodbye to the BMs and goodbye to the Ford Sierras.
A bit like the old days.
Yeah.
It's remarkable, isn't it, how 4 of those Sierra Cosworths came here. And by the start of the race, we lost the 2 quickest ones. The other 2 ran very strongly indeed. And they're not here at the end of the race. Neither is one of the M3s. The other one spent the day barging into other people. And the Cameron Wilkinson Commodore there also stopped by the side of the road. That went past gushing smoke out the back not long ago.
Bad luck for them. They were in 9th position and had done very well to get up there.
But the problem with Jim Richards, we understand, coming from the pits, oil pressure dropped alarmingly, and that was it for Jim Richards. They floated around, tried to see out the race, but the needle kept dropping, and back to the pits went Jim Richards. So oil pressure took care of him. At the moment, though, Perkins in no danger of being beaten out of 2nd spot.
Don't speak too soon.
Yes, with the kiss of death on this group today. Ken Bajan and Graham Bowkett. Now here's another success story for the Kiwis, the Longy Landers. They're running 3rd on the road at the moment. Not a great deal of sponsorship on the car. But I tell you what, they've put it together well in the endurance races. In fact, both drivers, Kent and Graham, prefer enduro racing to the sprints. Kent Bajan at the wheel to finish off the last few laps of this 87 Castrol Classic at Sandown. I tell you, the car sounds just as strong as when it started. We'll get you a gap back from our 2nd place car, the NZ Fluid Connectors Commodore, to that. Be quite a wide gap, I would imagine.
Close on a lap, I would think.
Yeah. In fact, if Larry keeps the pace up, he might even put 1 more on them before the finish of the race. There's Ken Bajan. Brian Sampson in the Bill O'Brien car just behind him. And yes, probably 300 or 400 metres back behind them is Larry Perkins running 2nd. And he'll put another lap on them perhaps before the checkered flag.
Apart from a couple of little moments of driver error, that car's run remarkably all day. No problems at all.
That's what they're chasing, the Castrol Classic Trophy here at Sandown. $25,000 for 1st place. And looking good at this stage in favour of George Fury. And of course, Terry Shield for the Peter Jackson Nissan team. Keep in mind that Terry only joined the squad for the endurance races. Hasn't done too badly. He picked up the big race at Calder Park recently, the first combined race on the Thunderdome and road course. Has taken the signal with 5 laps remaining in the 87 Castrol 500. Order is unchanged. Fury race leader, Perkins is 2nd. Ken Bajan runs 3rd on the road. Channel 7's own Neil Crompton is 4th. A remarkable performance from Neil and John Crook today. Behind them, Murray Carter and Kieran Willis and Philip Henley. The other Nissan Skyline, then Lorimer and Saxon, a BMW. That'll be the first finishing BMW. It'll finish in 8th spot.
I guess we can be forgiven for giving the raps to Crompton for a big performance, but we shouldn't overlook John Crook. He's the partner in the team, in the 2nd of the Mobile Dealer Team Commodores, and put up a mighty performance mid-race in his session behind the wheel. They circulated on the pace all afternoon, and slow and steady, as they say. Although they weren't slow, they were certainly steady, and they find themselves in 4th place, and they've been no worse off than 9th almost from the time the flag dropped.
It's very much the name of the game, though, when it comes to long distance racing like this. It's all down to consistency and running around at the same pace for lap after lap after lap, and that's why Alan Grice has gone to the trouble of importing Win PERCY. He's a man that can run around just maybe 1/10 of a second, 1/4 of a second off the pace that Gricey can run, but he can turn it in every single lap, and it's all about consistency.
Sure is. And talking about consistency, there's the man himself, Mr. Consistency, George Fury.
Pleased to see George come up with a win going up to Bathurst. Great little bloke, fine race car driver. one of nature's gentlemen. And I guess in the Touring Car Championship this season, because he had some car problems, he was forced to play protector and rear gunner for Glenn Seaton. Commodore running 15th on the road. That's Ken Matthews and Tony Mulvihill in the V8 Commodore. I tell you, there have been models of consistency throughout the afternoon. They haven't made the top 10 as yet, but that's not to say that the positions mightn't change. Good to see Kenny Matthews there. And Tony Mulvihill, of course, who's well known to 7 viewers of motorsport, is a very consistent performer. Of course, Allan Moffat, he went across to Spa this year.
We couldn't have got to Spa without Tony's contribution to our cause, and it was just a pity that he didn't get into the race. It's a long story to talk about at the moment, but a good fellow and a good driver, and he's looking forward to his entry at Bathurst.
Yes, it'd be good to see him because he's got a very consistent record at the James Hardy. Still belting out a little bit of telltale smoke, the number 30. Peter Jackson, Nissan Skyline. Boy, will this give Fred Gibson and the team a bunch of confidence. There's not too much we can really say more about the bad luck that beset Frank Gardner and the JPS BMW boys. They've had a great season, though, and they took the Australian Touring Car Championship, if only narrowly, from the blue and white Nissan Skylines. Now it's time for someone else to win one of the big ones.
Well, it just underlines the old adage, Mike, that you have to finish if you're going to win, and it doesn't matter what breaks. If it takes you out of the event, you've had the gong. But George has brought this one through beautifully. He's still using up all the road, not hurting the car. That's something that a good driver learns how to do real quick in his career, how to get speed out of his vehicle without hurting it.
You see that as being their advantage when it comes to Bathurst, competing against some of the European runners who are obviously going to be a fair bit quicker.
Well, they will be quicker, but they're also, for the first time in 8 races this season, the advantage server is going to go to the Australian teams, the local knowledge. And Bathurst is no chicken run for anybody. There's been some very brave fellows who've come out over the years and been intimidated extremely by Bathurst. I think it's going to be a tremendous race in that respect, that local knowledge and the professionalism of all the teams in Australia, the top 6 teams in Australia, can hold their own anywhere in the world, and they're going to give the Europeans a good run. But they're also going to be experiencing for the first time the kamikaze approach, which is very evident and is modus operandi for the European teams. Yeah, they have bigger budgets than us, and they can afford to do it that way.
The likes of Cicotto and Giacomelli and
Lafitte, Nannini. They're going to take one look at that mountain and try and wind it up on an elastic band. It's going to bite back, and they're going to get hurt when it does bite them back. But they're such triers and such goers that it's going to add an element that we haven't seen before, and the viewers on 7 around Australia won't see for a long time.
It's been a pretty crook year for the man on the land, but the man with the hand in car number 30, George Fury, has got a bit of rain today. That's good for farmers. And I tell you what, he's staring $25,000 prize money in the face. They've taken the last lap board for the 87 Castrol 500. Coming up to the left-hander, which takes them up past Motorcraft for the final time. And Georgie Fury will be feeling delighted at this stage.
He'll be delighted, Mike, but he won't be sighing relief until he sees that checkered flag.
Up Motorcraft Hill. Sounds sweet, though, the Peter Jackson Nissan Skyline. They're holding the advantage over Larry Perkins, Ken Bajan and Graham Bowkett, and Neil Crompton and John Cook. Sweeping out of there, down to the right-hander, brings them back through the infield. Or someone referred to it as the Village Grand Prix part of the circuit.
That's fairly aptly named, I'd say.
But I believe that the Light Car Club are working on a proposition to modify the circuit next year and connect up the old loop at the top end of the circuit, which will certainly make the circuit that much faster again.
Well, here's preparation showing you how to get results, and congratulations to all the mechanics that have put this number 30 together.
We're 21 days away from Australia's great race, the James Hardy 1000. The Europeans are due to arrive. The BMW teams locally, the Nissan team and our Ford Sierra teams are waiting for them. But this is the farmer they might well have to catch at Mount Panorama Bathurst in 3 weeks. The grandstand rises as Farmer Fury comes out of the last corner and sweeps across the finishing line. He wins the 87 Castrol 500. George Fury tastes victory. Second place goes to Larry Perkins and Denny Holm. Third to the Nissan of Kent Bagent, Graham Bowcat, and fourth spot to 7's own Neil Crompton and John Crook. Recap officially for you on the Castrol scoreboard. Fury and Shield first, Perkins and Holm second, Bagent Bowcat third, Crompton and Cook fourth, Carter Hawley take fifth spot in the Nissan. 6 goes to Kieran Willis and Philip Henley in a Nissan. 7, Bill O'Brien and Brian Sampson in the Holden. 8, Robbie Francevic of New Zealand and Ludwig Finau in a BMW. 9th home, Graham Lorimer in a BMW with John Sachs, and rounding out 10, Mark Scape and Grant Jarrett in the Nissan Gazelle. We'll be back in a moment. Oh yeah, strike up one for the little guy, George Fury, the winner of today's Castrol 500 at Sandown International Raceway. Gary Wilkinson will be talking with George very shortly. He's just taking a breather as the rest of the cars pull up. As I said to you, we have 21 days away from the James Hardie 1000. That's only a little of motorsport still to come on 7 Sport for 1987. It certainly will, and we promise you plenty more exciting World Championship motor racing coming your way on 7. The James Hardie 1000 that we've detailed throughout today, 3 weeks away from Australia's World Touring Car Championship race. And of course, as we've mentioned also, the second round of the World Touring Car Championship at Calder Park, which will also be the scene of the Australian 500 NASCAR Classic on November 29. That will also be a 7 Sports exclusive. Well, a great day for Georgie Fury and also for the Peter Jackson Nissan team. They played bridesmaids to JPS BMW in the Australian Touring Car Championship. And, of course, George has come up a winner this afternoon. Let's go to Gary Wilkinson.
Well, George Fury, congratulations. What a race.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here. Like, the Nissan reliability certainly brought us home with BP, of course, keeping on.
David Scanlon, Managing Director of Castrol, to make the presentation of the magnificent trophy to George Fury after a sensational drive here at Sandown this afternoon.
George, congratulations on another excellent drive. Thanks very much, David.
Well earned.
Well, I feel a bit sorry for Jimmy that, you know, we couldn't make a race of it all the way.
It was a race for a while.
Yeah, it was really good, and I think we both enjoyed it, but somehow he went out. I don't know what went wrong, but I mean, we just kept on going on like we usually do.
He was really hounding you there up until about 15 laps to go. He had you worried.
Oh, he had me worried, all right, but you know, I thought I had him under control, and you know, it could have been anybody's race, but I'm glad I'm here now.
I'm glad you thought you had him under control. Nobody else did, but congratulations, a fantastic win.
Good, thanks very much.
And of course, we better not forget co-driver Terry Shield, and the president of the Light Car Club, Jim Smith, is here to make the presentation to Terry.
Terry, all the best. You backed him up well.
Thank you, Jim.
And a good day, wet and dry.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank Fred and the boys for supplying us with such an excellent car, and I'm sure Bathurst, by the time Bathurst rolls around, we're going to be in for some more of this. Thank you.
Okay, George Fury and Terry Shield. Thanks to Jim Smith and to David Scanlon from Castrol. It has been a fantastic Castrol 500 for 1987.